Age of Wonders 3 is a 4X turn-based strategy game developed by Triumph Studios and released in 2014 for the PC, Mac and Linux. It's set in a vibrant fantasy world with a plethora of races and monsters. The game was well received and I remember never hearing much about it past its initial release. I played Age of Wonders 2 Shadow Magic to death when I was a kid, and I remember buying Age of Wonders 3 about 10 years ago. I played for a bit and then stopped. I can't quite remember why, but I know I never gave it much time despite the fact I would play Shadow Magic for hours. So why review this game over 10 years later? Well, Lord knows I have the time and I felt it deserved a revisit to see what I was missing out on. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how seriously Poland took the promotional campaign for this game. Look, they were giving away coupons, that's crazy. And also that I first heard about this game thanks to the late and great Total Biscuit. In short, Age of Wonders 3 is a game where you create a faction and a leader and then play to see your empire rise above the others. Along the way you can cast spells, train troops, recruit units, build infrastructure and explore. It is a 4X game, which stands for Explore, Expand, Exploit and Exterminate, none of which begin with X. What this does mean is that in forging your empire you will explore new lands, expand into them, take advantage of their natural resources and exterminate any who would stand in your way. It features both strategic and tactical level gameplay, a vast book of spells you can cast to impact the game how you see fit, and customizable factions and rulers. Rulers who aren't just figureheads for your empire, but controllable heroes you can take into battle. Before we even begin, the launcher will present us with a login option. Here is where you'd use your Triumph account to play multiplayer. As I won't be doing that, I can just play offline. This is also where you can enable and disable mods installed either manually or through the Steam Workshop. I've got some mods lined up, of course I have, but don't fret, I'm starting without those. When you load in as a nice touch, you'll be greeted by the faction leader you last played as. Sometimes this is good.
Nice.
Sometimes not so good.
What's wrong with your face?
The game features 2 campaigns in the base game and 1 for each DLC, totaling 4 campaigns for you math fans. I am playing with both DLCs installed, Golden Realms and Eternal Lords. I'm going to start with the Elven Court, which includes an optional tutorial. I'm familiar with the gameplay, but I think it's important to see how the game teaches new players, and so I'll review the tutorial. Everything I bring up I will go over in detail afterwards. I've got the option to select simultaneous or classic turns because remember, it's turn-based strategy, and I'll leave it on simultaneous for now. The campaign starts with this map and a nice voiced intro that sets up the world of Athla, and 2 major powers right off the bat, the Elven Court and the Commonwealth of Humanity.
It is our duty to protect Athla, so that the wonders of our world will never fade. My name is Sundren, and this is my journal.
We'll be playing as Sundred of House Iniok, a high elf rogue, and as we proceed we get a bit more of her story. Turns out she's the second child. Her brother has interlocked duelist and it's expected for her to play the role of wife to some noble. Sundred has other plans.
In public I may be a dutiful daughter, but I have trained and I have spied. I will be more than just a princess.
The whole scrolling text against artwork thing is reminiscent of older RTS scenario intros like Age of Empires 2. A pop-up offers to show us the tutorial, so go on then. And we're instantly hit by pop-up box after pop-up box explaining what everything is and what we should do next. Our advisor is unvoiced, which is a shame given the good voiceover to the intro of the scenario. I'm told to build a storehouse and explained why, and also given a basic understanding of army control. We meet some high elf swordsmen who failed to rout goblins from the local gold mine. They suggest we attack together to overcome the Green Menace. Werlak intervenes to note that bigger armies cost more money. We march on the goblins together and Age of Wonders shifts from the strategic level to the tactical level, and the game takes the time to explain the various units and roles they fulfill. Goblins have their own units, and while they fill similar roles to mine, they have their own racial and class differences. For example, they're quite good at demoralising my troops. In fact, even having them stand close to my beautiful elves disgusts them. This demoralising effect proves fatal when I make such a colossal tactical error in assuming Sundred might be a swashbuckling rogue master. I send her in to clear up the casters, she dies. I got my leader killed in the tutorial encounter. Fortunately, death for your leader is merely a setback. They'll respawn in a few turns at your throne city and even heroes can be brought back, for a price. So we purge the filthy goblins and retake the gold mine. Now I can pay my new troops. The game teaches us about quests, befriending independent cities, founding cities, flying and seafaring, and look, the reason I'm not going into too much detail about all these systems is they deserve more attention, and the tutorial was really quite boring. It's functional and assumes you have a basic understanding of strategy games. For instance, in tactical combat, I stumbled on the spellcasting button and then the tutorial for it popped up. I might have missed it in the dozen text boxes I read, but I'm fairly sure you'll only find out what this button does if you push it. That's never a good idea.
Is this a thruster control? Don't touch that, we don't know what it does.
We find the tomb of Sundred's grandmother, also infested with goblins, and once we coat the tomb with their blood, the ghostly voice of our grandmother warns us of enemies from within. As a reward for cleansing her tomb, we get a fortifying cup of tea. Oh, that's nice, that's lovely, thanks Nan. With a final push against the goblins, I realise I am gravely outmatched, especially as this goblin wizard keeps suffocating my elves. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is there is no way to load within tactical combat. I saved just before the attempt to siege the city, and I am forced to surrender and return to the strategic view before I can load my save. I return with many more units and, after learning Suffocate for myself, turn my new power on the goblins. It's a steamroll, I claim victory and the tutorial is over. It's an okay tutorial for the game, but it's hard for me to judge as I'm familiar with the genre, but honestly new players might find this lackluster, and if you are just sitting there waiting for instructions on what to do next, they won't always come. It gives you all the information to get started, but it's all pop-up text boxes, and I'm rarely a fan of that. Worse, it's unvoiced dialogue pop-up boxes, but I do like that they create a scenario with a small adventure that ties into the story. The main road in the scenario is meant to be followed to progress, plus most of these systems are self-explanatory and the rest you can figure out as you go. However, presentation-wise, this looks like an afterthought when compared to the Age of Empires 2 William Wallace learning campaign. A tutorial and short story rolled into one, with every instruction fully voiced, clear indicators on what to do and how to progress. That's a game that came out 15 years earlier.
To arms! The English are making a sneak attack!
Moving on to the campaign proper, it is time for Sundred to strike out with her brother Fanis. Together they're attending a meeting with an orc named Gamblag to discuss how to deal with those bloody humans. Fanis, however, wants us to deal with some bandits he spotted nearby, so we oblige, allowing him to proceed to the meeting. But something goes awry and Gamblag kills Fanis. Oh, I'm awake now, fucking hooray, I was recording this at 11:30. I've turned that down a little for headphone users, but the sound balancing will come back again, don't worry about that. As for Fanis, they bigged this guy up to be some sort of big brother warlord tactician. He fucking dead in the first 5 minutes. Sundred is pissed. Time to build up our forces, befriend the locals, and show that orc what we do with traitors. To get us started, we defend the nearby city of Eldaste from brigands, and in return they agree to aid us, making Eldaste our first city. So what does the general gameplay of Age of Wonders 3 consist of? Although it is oversimplifying it, for now we'll split it into two halves. Tactical and strategic. The strategic half is the map view. From here you will run the day-to-day of your empire, such as building up your city, training troops and sending them out into the map. Exploring, settling and controlling resources are all done here. You can also cast empire level spells. You can see the map is divided up into hexagonal tiles. The tactical side is the up close and personal combat. This is when your units engage enemies. Here you'll be given direct control over each unit in your army so you can move them about, give them orders, etc. Here you can cast combat level spells and again, hex-based environment to move about in. For now, let's go back to the strategic view and look to our first city. Cities are the backbone of your empire, acting as resource generators, harvesters and unit builders. There's a huge amount to talk about and how these systems work, so I'll do my best to keep things interesting, but I have to talk about the mundane stuff first because otherwise I won't be able to explain why the other systems are so satisfying. Don't worry, we'll get to the cool shit like tanks, archangels and... oh no man, they got fire giants in this game too. Oh fuck! I'm dead.
What? Fucking table flipped you.
Cities first serve to bring you income in the form of resources. There are 5 resources in Age of Wonders 3. Gold, production, mana, knowledge, and population. Quite literally human resources. Every city will generate gold and production each turn on its own without any interference. Gold may not be Quark's favourite thing.
There's nothing here but worthless gold! And it's all yours.
But it is mine. This is because it's shiny and pays for everything. The upkeep of your armies, the training of new units, the construction of city buildings, you can't do any of this without gold. Gold can also be used to hurry production, as in finish a project on the next turn, but that will make your citizens a bit unhappy. Unlike your gold stockpile, production is not empire-wide. It's tied to each city, and it's how quickly that city can finish building things or training units. Let's say you want to build a siege workshop, a building that requires 150 production to complete, and your city generates 50 production per turn. That building will take 3 turns to complete. A city with a higher production would finish it faster. Unlike gold, you can build city upgrades to generate more production per turn, like the siege workshop, which will give +10 to production every turn. The difference between low and high production is the difference between a AAA gaming studio with millions in funding and a bottling plant with sweatshop conditions and no regard for worker well-being. The latter, while immoral, will actually produce something in a reasonable amount of time. And lead tastes pretty good as well, so don't worry about it.
I like to quench my thirst with a delicious wolf cola.
Remember, the higher your production, the faster you churn out units, so really this is life and death stuff. And again, unlike gold, you can't save it up in a piggy bank. It's all used automatically on whatever project is next in the queue. What if you're not building anything? We'll get there. Mana is an empire-wide resource used for casting spells, summoning special units, and required to construct certain buildings. Your city won't make mana from the get-go without building shrines and temples. While you can hoard gold like Kolf Taroth, mana starts out being capped at 500 with a few ways to increase the cap through research or city upgrades. This encourages the player to spend it rather than sit on it. However, it's also to restrict a player's power level. This is because powerful summoned units don't have a gold upkeep, they have a mana upkeep. Some classes rely on mana more than others, but also know how to stretch it further. This is why sorcerers are the mana kingpins of Athla. They know how to make those blue crystals work like nobody else. My name is Merlin, yo. Knowledge is power. The more you have, the faster you'll research new spells and technologies. Like mana, you'll need to construct the appropriate buildings before you'll gain knowledge, but this is all it's used for, research. Population is a resource tied to each city, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's how big your city is. The larger your population, the bigger your city. There are 5 stages of city from outpost up to metropolis. Growing your city is one of the few ways to increase gold and production per turn. Growing your city will also increase its domain. Domain is your reach upon the land, spreading out from your cities like an arcane hand. Domain expansion is essential because of the way resources work in Age of Wonders 3, and no, I only know it because my friends are weebs. I do not watch Jujutsu Kaisen. I have never seen anime. I don't watch any of these. If free runs, I don't even know what that is. While cities do generate resources, the world is also dotted with treasure sites, locations of value with exploitable resources ranging from simple gold mines and mana nodes to sunken cities and magma forges. Taking control of these sites will grant boons, such as increased resources per turn, or special rewards depending on how rare the site is. And you can't take control of a site unless it falls within the domain of one of your cities. You'll usually start with a gold mine within your first city's domain. That's just an easy +10 gold per turn. But let's say that gold mine is occupied by enemy forces. Not necessarily an enemy ruler, but sometimes small independent factions. Even if it's within your domain, you won't see a penny from it until you take it over. And depending on the site's rarity, this might mean clearing a few wolves out from a farm or full-on tomb raiding, taking your units into a crypt to vanquish legendary undead heroes. These can be some of the more challenging encounters in the game, so if you're heading in there early, make sure you're prepared. Appropriately, these sites provide the biggest bonuses once captured. But what if a treasure site is outside your domain? Well, you can certainly take on enemies holed up there, but you won't be able to reap the rewards until it's within your reach. The larger your domain, the more treasure sites you'll be able to exploit. This is why I love the resource system in this game. For example, gold can be a real bottleneck for your empire, as unlike other games, you can't just build a market to generate more gold. It doesn't work that way. You spend gold on accumulating other resources and have to exploit more of the world to earn more gold. The game pushes you into a cycle of expansion and exploitation by necessitating one to serve the other. You can't expand your empire and armies without spending gold, and you can't accumulate more gold without expanding your empire using your armies. This creates forward momentum that encourages early game expansion, not through rushing to throw out cities randomly, but through careful positioning of new cities to capitalise on treasure sites both at the start and peak of a city's growth. You want your cities to claim treasure sites not just now, but in 30 or 40 turns, while also blocking your enemies from taking them. Your cities are also where you construct all your buildings, and the purpose will vary from building to building, such as military installations allowing you to train a greater variety of troops, while a shrine will generate mana per turn. Some buildings unlock special properties, such as the hospital, which will not only increase population growth and happiness, but also heal units faster so long as they're garrisoned within the city. Also, some military buildings ensure that trained troops will begin with proficiency ranks, but more on that later. There are also class-specific buildings, and again, more on that later. When it comes to choosing which buildings to construct, there are no real bad choices. It doesn't take many turns to construct anything, and the game doesn't lean into decision making too much here. You pretty much want to build everything that increases income. The choice is not so much what to make, it's about what to make first. If you really need a city to be a defensive barrier for your main income cities, then you'll prioritize a military structure. If your mana per turn is getting thin, build a shrine. Again, the only thing you can't just build more of is gold, which is why sometimes building nothing is the best option. Age of Wonders begins to set up its strategic choices early in city planning. And when your cities are not constructing any buildings or training units, they can be set to produce merchandise, mana, knowledge, or housing. When this happens, the chosen resource will have its output increased by 50%. Leaving this on merchandise is usually the safest bet, but if you really want to research that new spell quickly, choosing to have your cities prioritize knowledge will help you. Likewise, if securing treasure sites is most important by expanding your domain, a municipal funded breeding program will help your city grow faster. In Athla, love can get you money. In this sorcerer game, my starting city of Dubourg, I think you mean Castellan. You can rename all of your cities whatever you want. Castellan will increase in size in 3 turns. But I want it bigger sooner, to grab this magma forge I just cleared out. So switching to housing will mean my city grows in only 2 turns. Notice how the magma forge has its own tactical map in combat to reflect where you're fighting, and the tropical terrain is there also. More on terrain later. Your throne city is the equivalent of a capital city, and it's the most important of them all. It's your starting city where all your efforts will reach out from, and where your leader will resurrect from the void should they perish. You can move your throne city if desired, but it's a costly and slow process. If your leader dies and your throne city is conquered, the game is over. However, so long as not both of these things are true at the same time, you're still in the running. There is also the happiness system for your cities and your empire. Okay, listen, even my eyes are starting to glaze over, and I wrote this fucking script. There's just a lot of fundamentals to get through before we get to the fantasy tropes like dragons, knights, and big natural born snipers. These guys were birthed with a bow. Empire happiness is how happy your empire is overall. What is best in life? In Age of Wonders 3, it's to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and have lots of money, of course. Your empire oh, fuck me.
Your performance skills really are improving.
Your empire happiness is a baseline upon which all your cities will have their happiness applied. City happiness is how well that particular city is doing, but don't worry, they'll tweet about it if they're not doing too well. Your empire can have both shining cities and bad parts of town. You know what I mean.
I've got my eye on you.
City happiness is as important as empire happiness because a happy city will generate more resources. It's one of the few ways to increase the gold output of a city. There's also a chance happy cities will hold festivals.
Groovy, baby!
Simply making sure a population is safe and their needs are met will contribute to their happiness. But an unhappy city, and I don't just mean a crime-ridden goblin hole, I mean a truly unhappy city, is a threat, because they might turn from very unhappy sad face to rebellious. Rebels will begin to rise up and attack the city. They may even seize control. Worse, a rebellious city might send a secret message to a player, asking them to attack and take over the city. When a player attacks in this manner, the gates will already be thrown open, and rebels will come to help out. I love this. The system encourages you to keep citizens happy for financial gain and punishes you for making them miserable. This is especially important when taking cities because that city will not be happy it's being conquered. They now have new rulers, who may be an entirely different race to them, with a whole other D&D alignment. Yes, there's a good and evil system too, I'll get to it. Sometimes a newly conquered city is going to be difficult to rein in, unless you, let's say, incite a revolt in your enemy city first. Then you could go in and liberate them. If you're still suffering and the population of a city won't listen to reason, no matter how many bathhouses you build, you can always just kill the awkward bastards and build a new city. Fuck them. They don't know how good they had it. Raising a city will be considered an evil act. Of course it is, they won't let you do anything. So may as well plunder the city for its loot. It takes 2 turns longer, but you gain the same evil points. So it's just a better choice. I really like how happiness works because although it may seem like a hindrance, for your own cities it really isn't. It's just a nice passive bonus. However, for conquerors it presents both an opportunity and a problem. You can't just roll into a neighbouring city, take over and expect them to pump out luxury goods. You need to integrate them slowly or migrate your own population in there. On the other hand, there are ways to soften a city up first to your rule, such as the rogue spell to incite a riot, the sorcerer spell that conjures a dread omen in the sky, and the dreadnought ability to blow the ever-loving shit out of them. I name-dropped 3 classes there, so what are rogues, sorcerers and dreadnoughts? Now we get to the cool stuff. If you remember Sundred back in the main campaign, she is a high elf rogue. In Age of Wonders 3 there are different classes to pick, and think of these as archetypes for your empire. They will influence your playstyle, your aesthetic, your strengths and weaknesses. In the campaign you are given race and class combinations you're forced into playing, where in random maps you'll create your own ruler. This is why I had to talk about cities first instead of classes, because by now I've spent hours in the campaign and I'm done. I'm gonna be real with you. As I was writing this review, I remembered why I stopped playing 10 years ago. I just did not have fun with the campaign at all. The opening mission is great. Playing as Sundren the Rogue is pretty decent. The map is well laid out and fun. Chapter 2, I just did not enjoy playing the Draconians and Archdruid combo whatsoever. If that wasn't bad enough, I wasted 2 hours of my life building cities, exploring the world and establishing a base of operations, only to get utterly thrashed by waves of enemies and spells stacked on top of each other. Look at this. My cities are constantly revolting and spawning rebels. I figure I could keep pushing, taking cities once every half an hour, but it would be pulling teeth at this point, because every step forward is 2 steps back. I don't mind a challenge. Halo on Heroic, let's go. Wrath of the Righteous on core difficulty, my Blood Rager is strong. Bayonetta on hard, pony up, I'm ready. But this is just trying my patience. I'm essentially left with one other option, to restart the entire map. I looked online for advice because the difficulty curve was steeper than I expected, and quite a few players have expressed the majority of the campaign requires you to rush constantly. Not just be aggressive, as in, if you stop moving to build up your forces, you die. So that's what I do. I bum rush every city on the map. I don't even take the time to reinforce with troops besides summoning whatever I can and move on. Beat the mission in half an hour. It's okay to have a mission where rushing is the solution, but if the solution is to always rush, then I just don't think that's good design. Now, I wrote that paragraph after struggling to get into the game for 3 days. I kept picking it up, trying the campaign and putting it back down. Finally, I said screw it and played a bunch of random maps, and I played those for days. I loved them. The random maps are how I want to play this game. But I lamented this blemish being in my video. I take pride in always completing a game or reaching the end game at least. This isn't some, look at me, I'm Billy Big Balls. I don't care, it's just a video game. What I'm saying is I consider this to be the minimum standard for my reviews. I can't beat this campaign on normal. I'm that bad. I made it through chapter 3, again by rushing. And once I did that, it was basically over by turn 30. Hell, the only reason chapter 3 took so long is the dwarven fucker hides his cities through an underground river cave, which sounds really cool, but it isn't when you've just spent 30 minutes looking for it. I'm basically moving all my units to a city, hitting autocomplete, and then moving on. I'm beating the game, but I'm not playing it, savouring it, or enjoying it. The saddest part is, Chapter 3 would be a perfect way to teach the player about the importance of vassalizing cities through a well-scripted guided mission, but that never rears its head, further cementing that these scenarios, and it's important I stress this, the handcrafted campaign missions, even on normal, are made for people who already know this game inside and out, and are comfortable using a rock paper scissors solution to beat them. Worse, the Elven Court campaign is falsely advertised as being for Babby Diddums beginner players like me. It just isn't. You should go into random maps first and then tackle the campaign. So it's both a skill issue and a fun issue. But I will add this, a lot of the strategic and tactical nuance of the game is lost in the campaign, with utterly useless diplomacy and combat boiling down to rushing to overcome that scenario's particular niche. I've read this is because the AI was originally so dense there was no challenge whatsoever, so they put out a patch to make the AI perform better on random maps, with the side effect that all the campaigns now required you to be some fucking zoo unless you beat the enemy before they have chance to get out of bed. And if you can do the latter, the enemy will never be able to recover. You're also forced into playing race and class combinations that you might hate playing. You're burdened with heroes you don't want, and while they're great if you can level them up, if they die, you fail the campaign.
It's just a level of bullshit, bullshit, bullshit.
It's a shame, because while the story is super generic, I don't hate it. I think having one voice to tell the story is a great idea, and Sundren is a good choice to be that voice. And I'm not having a go at people who enjoyed the campaign. That isn't what I'm doing at all, and I respect the fact that people beat this. But I'm just not having fun in the campaign, so I can't review it. Fortunately, I don't think that's where the real gameplay of Age of Wonders 3 lies. I imagine most Age of Wonders players, whether we agree on the campaign or not, would say the real game lies in the random maps you can play. And the difficulty levels of easy, normal and hard don't even apply here. It's Squire, Knight, Lord, King and Emperor. These random maps will pit you against AIs or other players. And before we go any further, do yourself a favour and grab the unofficial patch from the Steam Workshop. This corrects bugs that have been present since the last official patch without rebalancing units or mechanics, meaning overpowered units are as strong as before, but the game will run smoother. And Gladen is still improving it as I edit this. They even put an update out while I was playing my Halfling Theocrat, and I was able to keep playing my save. Your results may vary, but something tells me there won't be any crash outs, unlike Skyrim. While in tactical combat, the first and most important thing you'll notice is that the camera is great until you try to move it. It's just awkward to use in every way, including having to pan with the middle mouse button. When you do, it's very slow, and the direction is inverted just for fun. There is apparently no way in-game to invert the tactical camera controls, or rather uninvert the camera controls. That is an insane oversight. You can fix this with the improved camera panning mod by Sunbather, which I absolutely recommend, as holy shit, after a few hours of the vanilla camera I felt like ripping my fucking hair out. And honestly, go ahead and grab the racial class unit reskin by Minion Slayer Tibbles, which is purely cosmetic, but you will thank me. This mod makes units look fantastic, with true racial variation on class units. Additionally, Age of Wardrobe Extended by Petra DF, which lets you use whatever clothes you wish without restrictions. None of these mods will alter the flow of gameplay. Don't want to use mods? Then don't. The game is entirely playable without them. I know because I played without mods for over a dozen hours, but I have a modding problem. I've sought help, but I've been told there's no cure. There are far more ways to customize your game than just the difficulty. How many opponents you'll face, whether some are more difficult than others, are they ready-made AIs, or have you crafted your own nemesis faction to play against? Small map or extra large? One huge Pangean landmass or many tiny islands? Control whether treasure sites and resource nodes are plentiful or scarce. Control how much of your map is beautiful forested hills and how much is shitty blight bog. Turn off the underground or the surface and play totally on a subterranean map with no way to see daylight. Change how frequent events are, even the speed of the game by adjusting the thresholds for research and city growth. You can absolutely create the perfect board for your game. Hell, someone might have even made one for you in the form of a scenario. These aren't like the campaigns. These are handcrafted maps designed around random games, pitting you against other rulers. There are two types of turns in Age of Wonders 3. Classic turns in which you go round robin, moving all your units and setting up what you want before ending your turn and letting the rest of the players or AI go. Or simultaneous turns, wherein everyone moves on the same turn to the best of the game's ability. This is a great way to make games take a lot less time, however it does result in some weird laggy orders, moments when you act first and others where the AI act first. It's very hit and miss in regards to who actually gets priority, and in truth I recommend going with Classic. The games will take longer, but you're less likely to get screwed in the old tried and tested round robin mode. The warning here is that some turns can take for fucking ever. Age of Wonders 3 really is a nice game to just put a movie on the side and just chill out for the evening.
I see.
First, they would tear up.
Wait a sec, hang on. My incubation chamber is ready. Gotta alt-tab back to the game. Once you've thought about your ideal world to conquer, design a conqueror. There is a whole list of ready-made rulers for you to browse through here, from high elf warlords to druid dwarves. But the real wonder of Age of Wonders is in creating your own faction. And finally, we talk about the classes. The warlord is exactly what it sounds like. Do you like swords?
Swords!
Swords!
Yeah, swords.
That's what warlords are all about. They mostly don't bother with stupid magic, caring instead for blood combat, training units to be the best they can be, and inspiring forces to fight to the brink of death and then some. Every class can train or summon class-specific units to use in battle, as well as build unique city improvements. Warlords feature berserkers with huge axes, monster hunters who are masters at slaying non-humanoids, and warbreeds who are essentially half ogres. Warbreeds are especially fun because they double as living, walking siege engines. The other end of the spectrum is the sorcerer. Too weak to swing a sword? Summon a phantasm to swing it for you. Sorcerers are all about summons and maximizing strategic and combat spells. Their units can float, and with training can teleport around in combat. Eventually they can even teleport whole armies back to the safety of their throne city. Nobody casts spells like a sorcerer, whether it's bringing a thunderstorm down on an enemy city or tearing open a rift in reality from which arcane terrors pour forth. Archdruids are another summon heavy class, and they're about summoning animals, lots of animals, and buffing them into enraged beasts. I just didn't really enjoy how they felt to play, mostly because their units look so goofy, but this horned giant is badass and the high level spells look fun. If warlords are chads who spend all day in the gym, then sorcerers are nerds who spend all day in the library. Who is objectively more powerful? Neither, because both fall victim to the whims of the rogue. The Sigma, who divides their time equally between calisthenics and Sudoku. They who are both alluring and charming, yet deceitful and ruthless. Rogues are, unexpectedly, my favourite class in the game. No, honestly, they're great. Rogues capture it all. Backstabbing, stealth, sabotage, gold making, gold stealing, negotiations, seduction, shadow, and manipulating with the skill of a Romulan.
You have manipulated the circumstances with the skill of a Romulan.
I love this fucking class so much, and I say this as a guy who is usually all about big barbarians or wizards. Theocrat. Now, I know what you're thinking if you've seen my other videos, probably loves this class too. Yeah, they're pretty cool, but being on the receiving end of a Theocrat is an absolute nightmare. They're very much about keeping all their units alive, not by outsmarting the enemy, but through tactical use of healing and buffing their forces while debuffing the enemy. In the base game, the final class is the Dreadnought, and this was the flagship class of this game back when it came out. You saw this guy everywhere, and to this day I can remember the way they introduced this class in the announcement trailer. A commander with a monocle stirring his tea while he looks down from atop a monstrous war machine churning up everything in its path. This is peak class fantasy for an industrial faction in a high fantasy world. Dreadnoughts are about making unstoppable machines and powerful ranged units. Their machines are totally immune to blight and spirit damage, armoured to take reduced damage from melee and ranged attacks, and tireless, meaning they can freely retaliate and take attacks of opportunity without using up action points. Their roster includes flamethrower tanks that explode on death, and the Juggernaut, a technological terror that crushes trees as it moves and can fire full broadsides on land. This power comes with a steep price. Machines cannot regenerate health, nor be healed by magic. They can only be repaired in cities with the appropriate upgrades, or by elite rank engineers. What's an elite rank? I'll get to it soon. Dreadnoughts have fewer spells than other classes, but they do include being able to blast enemy cities from afar, as well as being able to drop off a cheeky little mana bomb if they're able to get an army in close. Garrosh would be proud. What makes a Dreadnought functionally different to a Warlord? Well, I think the idea they were going for is that a Warlord is, as the name implies, a master strategist and warrior. They're about manoeuvring and applying force at the right point until you're ready to take your prize, pressing your advantage like a pinball machine moving from city to city, and honestly that's how I played one. While a Dreadnought is meant to be like a blunt instrument, what the Empire wants the Empire takes by force, moving across the landscape. Once they've taken a city, it's not so easy for them to just attack the next one. They may need to repair, and will need infrastructure in that city to repair. Plus, reinforcements are costly. The Dreadnought really does stop for tea between each battle, while the Warlord looks to another city and proclaims, "You're next, bitch!" If you can stop a Dreadnought in their tracks, they can't recuperate like a Warlord can. The question is, can you stop one? The Eternal Lords DLC adds Necromancers, and I will talk about them later, because they play entirely differently to any other class and need their own segment. Basically though, same as Grim Dawn, Necromommy thumbs up. Picking a class is only half of it, then you need to select a race. Races, oh my goodness, we haven't even talked about fighting yet. There's so much to this game, and I'm doing it all in reverse order, I'm sorry, but it will make sense. There are several fantasy races to choose from in the world of Athla, and your choice goes far beyond the aesthetic. It will affect everything from the type of elemental damage you dish out, the type that you're weak to, how hard you hit in melee, or how much punishment you can take. It may even determine if your infantry carry shields or are bloodthirsty feline hulks. Have you heard of the High Elves? They're beautiful, graceful, delicate, and extremely old. Fortunately, they're also immortal and eternally youthful, resulting in absolute peak Gelfs. That's G-E-L-F. They love to sing and prance about like every other elf stereotype, but these ones do it all in the privacy of their forests. The High Elves of Athla are a combo of wood elves, but that's part of the lore for the race. It's said that travellers who stay with the elves are so sad they have to leave, they fucking die from broken hearts. Imagine staying in a hotel so good, the outside world becomes unbearable. Essentially, every High Elf unit will do a portion of its damage as magic shock damage, meaning they have value versus enemies that have strong defense, but low spell resist, and vice versa. At least some of that damage will get through. Humans are of course the you can do anything race, and their Tomb of Wonders entry is uniquely dull out of all the race descriptions. They really love fertile plains and they're humans, but the units, buildings and synergies make up for the lackluster lore. They're very good at sailing, meaning they can fight just as well on water as on land, and they love to armour up as many of their units as possible. A lot like the dwarves, who just love getting smacked about. Capable of taking punishment and preferring to be immovable objects rather than unstoppable forces. That's only on the battlefield, however. Strategically, they are the best at traversing mountains and the underground. In fact, they're happier when mountains or caves are nearby. These guys even armour up their Forge Priests, whose basic heal provides fire resistance while buffing melee with fire damage. Very nice. Do you like muscular green men? Do you like a spike aesthetic, painting yourself and wearing the skin of your enemies? If you answered yes to these, then the orcs are for you. They're also pretty generic, but how can you not love a description that starts with the orcs are creatures of destruction. They live to break things down. Orcs also hate things of beauty, so I imagine every orc art gallery is a modern one. Most orcs can warcry once per battle to increase their physical damage, and all orcs have Victory Rush, regenerating health the moment they're victorious in battle. Goblins are the gamers, quite literally born prematurely by the bowels of the earth. They are filthy, sadistic, and wish to conquer all dark caves. Not my words, that's the Tomb of Wonders lore entry. It even says they play Valorant. This does put them in the bloodthirsty violent category, and while I understand that's a perfectly valid choice, I would have preferred the greedy money grabbing type to provide some variety. Orcs are green and violent. Goblins are green and violent. You see what I mean? Oh, you know, Draconians. What do you want from me? They're fucking dragon people. Look, I love dragons, but I wish they were lizard men. Also, no dinosaurs in Age of Wonders 3? Shit game, 0 out of 10. Real talk, I love their Aztec vibe, but I'm not a big fan of how they feel to play. Golden Realms, an expansion pitched to sailing to exotic lands filled with naga, elephants and dread monkeys. Adds the halfling race, which doesn't exactly scream jungle adventure, as I instead picture a small halfling with a balding head waddling around the corner of the field with a pint of beer and a roast potato. Jokes aside, I do think the halflings are a great choice for a race because the term Golden Realms can just as easily refer to never-ending fields of green and gold. But fuck halflings. They are the most bullshit race in the game because of one inherent racial trait. Lucky bastards. Lucky is a 10% base chance to avoid all incoming damage from an attack. This is to make up for their diminutive size. Halflings have a 20% weakness to physical damage. That's pretty big, and are generally weaker in melee. Okay, so lucky sounds like a fair trade-off, right?
Not this time.
Lucky goes up with morale, so the happier your halflings are, the greater that chance of it proccing. Going all the way up to 25% chance on every incoming attack to just not take damage. And if you can get lucky on a unit twice, it stacks into what is called very lucky. 50% chance to avoid an attack. There's no internal cooldown on this, meaning you can swing 3 times at a halfling and miss every single attack on your turn. Halfling racial units serve to buff health and morale, so not only do they overcome their weaknesses anyway, they do it while buffing lucky. Disgusting. Gross. I can't wait to play one. Race governance is a mechanic added in Eternal Lords and is sort of like a proficiency system for races. The longer you have a race in your empire, the better that race will become, and the happier they are, the faster your race governance will level up. Every race has its own unique governance track, and it's not some sprawling perk tree, it's a 5-tier system with a choice of 2 perks. You get enough XP, you can pick between a military or economic perk for your race. Basically a high elf battle pass, but the choices are different enough to warrant some thought. Well, sometimes. The top tier human perk choice is really difficult. The military perk will grant a +1 boost to the resistance, defense and attack of every human unit you make, no matter what it is, while the economic perk will change produce merchandise to increase your city's gold income by 100% instead of 50%. So my choice is between doubling a portion of my gold income every turn, which would let me train and upkeep more units, or having stronger units overall. I usually take the money, but you can see what I mean. Compare this to the High Elf top tier perk of +5 casting points, or letting my archers and support units ignore line of sight penalties. Ignore line of sight! This isn't even a fucking choice! Give my archers those X-ray specs! Eternal Lords adds 2 new major races. The first are Tigrans, Tigrans, they're cat people, but don't be fooled. These aren't your cute cat girl and sussy catboy types. These are full-on convention goers with expensive suits. They mean business and are built to tear you limb from limb. They're naturally curious about necromancy, which makes sense because cats do play with dead things. This does, however, cancel out the other law that cats are guardians of the underworld and are feared by bald people. Their units are made to synergize really well, going beyond simple formation synergy, such as having some units apply bleeding and having another with the bloodthirsty trait, meaning they deal more damage to bleeding targets. They can also leap about the battlefield like a cat. The second are Frostlings, pale blue people deficient in vitamin D who were forced to retreat into the frozen north, where they devoted themselves to powerful sorceresses wielding ice magic. Then the ladies started picking their mates and the society turned matriarchal. They chose their mates depending on which were the heartiest, resulting in a male population constantly grinding, bulking and carb cycling in the hopes of being chosen to reproduce by an ice mommy. This makes the Frostlings the most based race in the game. They're all about dealing cold damage, and there's a lot of movement impairing abilities. I feel they wanted to create that fantasy of a Frostling player slowly chilling their enemies to the bone as their legs begin to freeze. They play quite differently to other races, with hulking cavalry capable of crushing walls, Royal Guard who explode into ice crystals upon death, and I wasn't kidding, Ice Queens on bear-drawn chariots who support an army with powerful magic. All Frostlings have innate frost protection and fire weakness, but the Frostling support unit, the White Witch, can buff units to have fire protection, negating this innate weakness. Age of Wonders does a lot to create weaknesses, but gives the player tools to level them back out again, provided your army is diverse enough. This is a good time to bring that up, because finally, we're ready to talk about combat. And what better way to talk about the combat than by creating an absolute unit, an Orc Warlord, the legally distinct Karshak Sour Fang.
Without armor?
I have a rule while playing as Karshak. If I can crush them, I must. Which is why I make friendly with these Frostlings. Sailing my army over the river at this point is just too much aggro, so let's be friends. I vassalize them and they can send me money. More on that whole system later. This is about war. However, if you'd like to send me money, provided you enjoy my videos, you might want to check out my Patreon. You can support me there from £1 a month and there's a link in the description below. Such a smooth segue. Okay, back to Orc. Playing a Warlord encourages you to be aggressive, but there's that danger in the early game of leaving your city vulnerable. I set off on a quest for glory, only to immediately spot these roving brigands, but I've already exhausted my army's movement. I have to hope they don't plan on sacking my throne city. Losing my throne city to bandits, only to retake it next turn, is something that will happen to me again and again. I find the source of the brigands. This is important because there are 2 types of independence: roving forces and stationary. Stationary forces will remain on their treasure site, guarding their precious resources. They'll range from pixies, dwarven firstborns to orange horses. They might even offer to flee instead of fight, allowing you to let them go for good alignment points or crush them for evil points and experience. They will always remain on their starting point, however. Roving indies like bandits and necromancer cults spawn from bandit hideouts, ritual circles, etc., and they'll keep spawning and sending out groups to assault your scouts and start up cities, meaning they seriously hinder your ability to explore and exploit the map. But they're also farmable experience. Honestly though, just fucking kill them. They become a right ball ache later in the game. So we march. This is one of the few times I just let auto combat play out entirely, because this bandit camp in the snow at night time, just look at this. It's easy to sleep on visuals in strategy games, I think, because this threat is so weak you might not even bother to fight this battle. You might not even see this tile set. But this is so pretty. The starry sky, the fire and smoke, seeing the orcs run into battle. The tactical combat in this game is deep, but if you prefer to just play strategic and auto-resolve most of your fights, dude, you can still get a real spectacle in this game, just by going in and putting on auto combat. Although I recommend you turn off action cam in the settings so your camera doesn't bounce around between guys like it's a bad porn shoot. On the strategic map, you'll have army stacks. An army can be made of up to 6 units, and it's usually a good idea to have at least 1 hero per army stack, as they can buff their troops up just by having them in their army. The hex-based map in Age of Wonders 3 is where the combat shines, because you can bring more than just those 6 units to a fight. This is because adjacent armies, if they're of the same faction, will join in the combat. The neighbouring hexes will all join in, so surrounding a city with armies is not only possible, it levels the playing field considerably. The reverse is also true. Cities with multiple army stacks will pose a far greater challenge. This means you can team up armies to help you explore the map easier, or choose to send your armies off in opposite directions. Once combat begins, their position on the tactical map will be determined by where they were on the strategic map, as in armies directly behind will have to move in and catch up, while armies at the sides will have an easier time flanking. This adjacent hex system allows for truly massive battles between 2 factions. However, we're here to talk about tactical combat, so let's begin. The tactical combat map is made up of hexes, similar to the strategic map. The design of the battlefield will reflect where it takes place, but let's keep it simple for now and focus on moving your troops around the tactical map and positioning them. Of course, while you can just beeline straight to an enemy like a moth to flame, it's best to get a bit more creative. There will be obstacles on every battlefield that can work for or against you. For example, putting some archers behind rocks or crates will inflict a line of sight penalty on any attacks they make, but it will do the same to any ranged attacks made against them, serving as light cover. It also serves to make it harder for melee units to attack them if they physically can't reach them. An archer behind a few rocks may take more movement points to reach because the melee units have to travel around the obstacles, so those foot soldiers trying to catch up with the longbowmen might be able to do it next turn if they're still standing. The quarry map is a perfect way to demonstrate this. There are tall stone pillars which totally block attacks, along with shorter pillars which provide light cover. There are also great chasms where units on foot are forced to go around. If I take a vulnerable unit like the Orc Priest and put them there, I've increased the travel time for attacks trying to reach them. More than that, I can set up a kill zone for my other units that will engage enemies trying to reach the priests. But as you can see here, even with this planned out, your enemies may not play nice. My priests are nearly dead, and if that enemy is alive the next turn, I'll lose my priests. This is where flanking comes into play. When you attack an enemy, it will turn to face the attacker and might retaliate if possible. Meaning if an enemy is standing right in front of your soldiers and looking straight at them and your troops attack, the enemy will retaliate. They're ready for the attack. But if I attack with someone from the rear, I flank them. The enemy will turn to try and retaliate to that attack. If it's another melee unit, they might get in some hits, but it will still be less severe than just a head-on assault. Flanking does more damage outright, but its real strength is in the ping-pong mechanic I just described, because you can distract a unit with ranged attacks, causing them to turn around and face your archers, who are in a whole other time zone, and then flank them again with your melee, the very guys they just forgot about when they turned around. But there's even more to positioning and flanking, like blocking. If you can find a little pocket like this surrounded by trees, you've got a perfect spot for your archers and casters to hide in the woods and fling spells, pointing and laughing at the bozos with shields. Just hope they don't bring a fucking giant with them, because they won't feel so smart when they get blocked in. Cover will also impact directional AoEs like breath attacks, meaning you can funnel breath attacks through an open gap, but units to the side will be spared your flame. This is such good attention to detail. Speaking of, blocking other units with your units is a way to create your own obstacles, but it can also hinder you. You can accidentally block your own warpath if you send your troops in to charge, as they will take the most efficient route possible, meaning they sometimes end their turn on a choke point, denying your other troops moving up to support them. Here I accidentally blocked my orc forces inside my own city. truly a Zansu approved move. This took place during a minor siege, but sieges can become truly monumental battles with a defending army upon the city battlements and an attacking army having to cross the field to make their assault. Ranged units, both archers and casters, attacking from the top of the walls will gain an advantage, but melee units will basically be twiddling their thumbs up there. You need to decide whether to let them out onto the field or keep them there should the worst happen and the enemy make it past the city walls. They can do this by attacking with siege units or saboteurs, destroying walls and gates to allow units through, or by sending wall climbing units to scale the walls at a significant movement point cost. Then there are units capable of just ignoring the walls entirely by either flying over them or phasing through them like they're not even there. Ensuring you have a tactically viable army is essential, as these elves soon learn. You made a big mistake, the snooty elves tell me, my empire will fall. Even though I outnumber them, they are still fighting from a defensible position. They would have the advantage. However, their army is comprised entirely of melee units. An honour-bound orc respects that. The glory of the melee is unmatched, and I shall remember them as my spear throwers turn them into pincushions. Having a blend of units ensures you can deal damage from afar while providing protection to those ranged units should the need arise. These elves failed to diversify and they're dead. But they fought well. Infantry are your rank and file soldiers and come in all shapes and sizes. Some have swords and shields, some have big sticks. This doesn't mean they're basic bitches because infantry also includes Dwarven Firstborn, Draconian Flyers and Deathbringers, who can curse enemies they attack in melee to rise as undead servants. Technically, even this tier 4 Fallen Angel is infantry, so when she screams so loud you turn to stone, remember she's still just boots on the ground.
Yeah, quit your squawking, D.
Never underestimate the value of a swordsman between your enemy and your ranged units. Archers are your physical range damage dealers, but there are different varieties that keep things fresh. Orc razor bows have a chance to inflict bleeding, which might end up killing a weak target on the following turn. Draconian flamers don't actually shoot single enemies, they throw small area of effect fire bombs. And halfling jesters shoot fireworks. Support units are exactly as they sound. They serve to support other units but also double as ranged attack in most cases. There are vast differences between racial and class support units. The human and dwarf priests can heal, for example. The orc priest and the goblin blight doctor, despite the name, cannot. The former support your units by keeping them alive, the latter support your units by slaying their enemies. However, I do like that the Goblin Blight Doctors can cure disease, so the medical license isn't just for show. They also deal different types of ranged attacks. I can't stress how much I like the racial differences in this game. Irregular units are a bit of everything. The Orc Spearman, for example, has decent melee and a spear throw attack, while the Rogue Scoundrel can shoot a crossbow but also blow up walls. From monster hunters to sphinxes, any unit that can do more than one thing goes in here. Cavalry units excel at running in and dealing high damage to archers and casters. They're the best way to close the gap between you and the enemy, as nearly all cavalry units have charge. Charge works by putting a +6 on a unit's first strike if it's moved more than 4 hexes that turn. This doesn't just make them powerful against squishy units, but great for finishing blows or rushing in to save another unit. There are other unit types like elementals, animals, monsters and dragons, and they all fit their thematic descriptions. Undead is not a unit type, rather a unit condition, if that makes sense. A bone dragon is still a dragon, they just happen to be undead. Which is why I was so confused monster hunters don't get a bonus to killing undead, because undead isn't a type of monster, there just happens to be undead monsters.
Alright, let's get started before my headache gets any worse.
All units have tiers from 1 to 4 and you'll progress through them as you research and upgrade your cities. Tier 1 is what you'd expect, your footmen, your bow and arrow boys, your regulars. Tier 2 is a bit fancier with priests, maybe blokes on horses. Tier 3 is where the specialists show up. Knights, Ice Queens, Exalted Ones. Then there are tier 4 units, and these units are meant to be expensive, late game, battlefield dominating forces of destruction. We've got Shrines of Smiting, the Kraken, Fallen Angels. And while the tiers definitely correspond to how powerful they are, your lower tier units are rarely truly useless at endgame. The Shrine of Smiting with its powerful prayer bolts, it can be shut down simply by having a unit engage it in melee. Sure, it can do its holy power fart, Divine Vengeance, but only once per battle. Just getting a simple foot soldier to stand next to it will remove its ranged ability entirely. There's no denying an army made up of largely tier 3 and 4 units will beat a tier 1 army, but an army with a good selection of high tier bombshells supported by low tier helpers, now that's a good army. There aren't just tiers, there are also ranks. I love this game, there is so much going on. Okay, what are ranks? Ranks represent how experienced your units are in combat. For the most part, units will start as recruits without a medal next to their portrait. As they fight and gain experience, they'll rank up through to Trooper, Veteran, Expert, and finally, Elite. At which point they only play quick play because the games are too hard and they want to flex on casuals, or they make a smurf so they can keep streaming Spider-Man. Once a unit has reached Elite rank, it will continue to earn experience and gain Champion ranks. Every Champion rank increases a unit's health pool by 10. Ranks are such a cool system because you're encouraged to try and keep your units alive, even your cannon fodder. In this game I feel bad when my cannon fodder die because who knows what they could accomplish. Well, I do, because I know that if my high elf swordsmen survive to Veteran, they'll inflict bleeding wounds in combat. Yeah, I bet you were thinking ranking up just gives them more health and damage, right? No. The rogue succubi get lifesteal and regeneration, and the Shrine of Smiting, oh dude, remember how I said putting a soldier in melee will stop a shrine from firing its attack? If you can keep a shrine until it reaches Elite rank, it gains a static shield. Now whenever someone attacks it, not only do they take lightning damage, they have a chance to be stunned, so you can't keep it locked down. That's disgusting. Some units can even evolve when they rank up, like the Draconian Hatchling. If you somehow manage to get the Hatchling to Elite, it will evolve into a better unit, including a tier 3 flying infantry. As a nice touch, human cavalry units have evolved also. Ranking your tier 2 cavalry unit up to Elite will result in a promotion to Knight. The Knight is a powerful tier 3 cavalry unit with monster and dragon slaying power. They are one of only 2 cavalry units equipped with a shield, the other being the Dwarven Manticore Rider, only available to Dwarven Warlords. See how all these little intricacies trickle down to create this really amazing interconnected series of systems that affect everything. I love it. I don't want to update Windows 10, fuck off. Why am I saying this now? The Warlord is unique in that they have access to mounted archers, allowing them to be less squishy and giving them a way to reposition quickly. Warlords can further buff all their mounted units with thoroughbred mounts. Oh, but Dreadnoughts get the Empire Research sidearms. Sidearms give every cavalry unit a sidearm to fire. Muskets work differently to crossbows and bows. They fire one exceptionally powerful shot and then need to be reloaded. Reloading takes up an attack action for a unit, unless they are a hero, in which case they will reload automatically regardless of if they attack. Just to reiterate quickly, Age of Wonders 3 allows you to train Knights of the Realm that roll up and shoot someone in the fucking face. You see how all this stuff synergizes to create distinct playstyles. The unique racial units and bonuses combine with the class units and bonuses, allowing you to build a faction almost like an RPG character, although obviously to a far lesser extent. If you want to take a look at the available units, you can use the in-game Infopedia, which is quite exhaustive, but I suggest checking out the Age of Wonders 3 database, which I believe is by Minions Art. It's on Minions Art GitHub, so I'm not entirely sure if that's the creator's name. Either way, it's been invaluable in making this review, and it's just fantastic. You can search by unit names, races, even their abilities, so if you want to find a unit that can poison, it's never been easier. Anyway, back to my Orc Warlord. Now that I've taken the city, I could absorb it into my empire, keeping the high elf population and giving me access to their racial units with potential to set up an Orc massage parlour for the elves. But this is a Warlord playthrough, and Orcs don't play. We displace the elves and migrate our own people in. What happened to the elves? Don't know.
Burn it!
Remember I said playing a warlord encourages you to be aggressive? This isn't just because their units are great at getting in head first. The warlord's tactical spells work to buff allies up, making them stronger and hit harder, even giving them the chance to rebirth themselves in the glory of combat. Meanwhile, their strategic spells serve to reduce upkeep, deny empire expansion by raising their own cities when they're conquered by enemies, and even forcing their cities to have larger domains through authority of the sword. All this encourages a playstyle that revolves around taking cities rather than settling new ones. Warlords are all about pushing their units to their limit, with spells that impact their own armies more than the enemy. As far as I know, there are no direct damage warlord spells, because everything is about rallying your troops or demoralizing the enemy on the battlefield, versus the sorcerer, which is all about summoning in troops where you need them and dealing damage to the enemy. So we've talked about the chess pieces, now let's talk about the boards, the field of battle itself. This battle at a lonely tavern is in the middle of a frosty open plain. This magma forge is surrounded by a tropical environment. This is important because the battlefield map is made up of multiple terrain layers. First you have the climate. There are 7 types of climate: temperate, tropical, arctic, volcanic, blighted, water, and subterranean. Yeah, we haven't even got to the fucking underground yet. Next comes the type of terrain within the climate. Terrain types include fertile plains, dense vegetation, barren lands, and wetlands. Finally, you have the tile feature, and these are your treasure sites, your outposts, or your cities. Basically, they dictate what you'll be fighting through should a battle take place. If a battle starts and no treasure site or other important feature is present, you'll do battle on the terrain type. So pick a fight out in the blighted wetlands where no sod lives, and that's exactly what you'll get. You can even have a fight in a subterranean fairy circle against evil fairies. Climate is important for many reasons. Most of all is that races have preferences, but think of it less as what climate a race prefers, more what they don't detest. Races work best in certain climates and actively dislike other climates. The best example are Tigrans. They don't perform any better in the tropics because that's just their home. They do, however, hate Arctic climates because they stick to the warm sands. The same is true for the terrain type to a lesser extent. Orc and Tigrans like barren regions, and High Elves and Halflings like dense vegetation. So why is all this important? Terrain affects the speed you can traverse the map to how happy your people are. Every unit has movement points, the amount of distance they can travel in any turn, both on the strategic map and the tactical map. A foot soldier will have less than a mounted knight, you get the idea. But every step they take is determined by a base movement cost plus the terrain and climate modifier. And this is, as I said, different for every race. So races will move more efficiently over their favoured terrain. The base movement cost of every strategic map hex is 4, that just stays the same. Then you add the terrain type modifier on top of that. Running through the tropical wetlands, that's a base cost of 4 plus 2 for the wetlands. The game will try to take the most efficient route. Here, even though it will take a whole turn just to get across these mountains, it's still faster than circumventing them. But there are units with traits that counter these modifiers. Frostlings, for example, have Arctic walking, reducing the movement cost across all Arctic terrain, while goblins have wetlands walking, nullifying that +2 movement cost for all wetlands. Hell, goblins can forage in the wetlands, meaning they heal faster between battles when on wetlands. Those gremlins are made for the muck. Some special other examples exist, like draconians and fire giants being totally okay with lava, and Naga and merfolk appreciating water, which makes sense. This all means moving your armies across the strategic map may take longer if the terrain isn't ideal. Your army's morale will also be directly affected by the terrain, with their morale being higher on terrain and climate they feel at home in, and suffering when in lands they find most disagreeable. And all this brings it back to cities, the backbone of your empire, because your race, your people, will also want to be in cities founded on terrain they find comfortable. When a city is surrounded by largely appealing terrain, it will result in a positive modifier on city happiness. The reverse is also true. Found a city on terrain your race hates and they'll suffer a negative happiness modifier. So your high elves might not be too happy if you put up posters advertising to go colonize the new world, only to realise they've been duped into settling on some blighted shithole. This is why if you conquer a city and don't plan to make it into an army printer, absorbing the native race is a no-brainer. They're usually on terrain they like and the city will be happier. And remember, happier cities produce more of everything, especially gold. It doesn't end there, because Age of Wonders 3 will let you use magic to fight these problems with the terraforming spells. You can change terrain types within your domain, sponging up the wetlands into fertile plains or even spreading a nicer climate out from your cities. Here I turn a whole frozen island into a lush forest, perfect for the elves. Global warming, it was all me. These 3 layers come together like a delicious location sandwich, meaning you're rarely fighting the exact same battle in a row twice. The Age of Wonders 3 terrain system is marvellous in its execution, but undercooked in its application. For example, the barren lands appear in every climate except water, which means you have rocky highlands, scorching deserts or frigid wastes. All of these are barren lands, they're just in different climate. Dense vegetation in a temperate climate is a heavy forest, where firs pierce the sky. Meanwhile, in a tropical climate, it's a thick jungle. You can imagine your troops carving their way through the vines to pass this. All these are also present in the underground, so you can have thick mushroom forests and soggy subterranean wetlands. This is fantastic. They laid the groundwork for a truly amazing system. One of the best terrain foundations I've seen in a strategy game, and just made it affect your movement speed and morale. Worse, once you get into tactical combat, all the climate stuff boils down to morale. There's no movement penalties or bonuses. It strips away all of the movement cost modifiers present on the strategic map and gives everyone the same movement rate per hex. I think this system really could have been capitalised on with the races. They started doing that a little with the goblins, who get a significant boon on blighted climate and wetlands terrain. Maybe human cavalry can move further in a single turn on fertile plains, and high elf archers can disengage without an attack of opportunity on dense vegetation. Small but decisive advantages that could turn a battle without meaning they ensure victory every time. Also, any halflings should obviously have a chance to gain last stand when on volcanic terrain. Add to that, essentially every race likes fertile plains and temperate climate. The climate system is so big in scope, but does very little. Yet this ensures that a game isn't bogged down by the land itself, if that makes sense. You're never annoyed by happening to be on awful terrain. It doesn't slow the game down any, and unless you just straight off start a random map on the worst terrain possible, it's mostly nice window dressing. In short, I love the system, I wish it was utilised more, but I understand why it isn't, and I don't really know how to suggest they would have changed that. Still, a shame. Back to movement costs for a moment. The time cost for moving your armies around is quite high. Often it can take 2 turns just to get your units from one of your cities to a bordering city. Age of Wonders fosters a mindset of being prepared rather than reacting, because you more often than not won't have time to react. Here, for example, when my warlord is away retaking the Frostling Kingdom, it's the exact moment a dreadnought chose to attack, and I'm thinking I can take him, but then I see he has more units coming. This is one instance where I have a nearby city and I can start to send troops to reinforce, but they will not get there in time. There's just no way, even with the road I built, to react to Lucien's attack if he chooses to push. The AI decided it wasn't worth it because even if he took the city, I'd likely retake it the next turn. So Lucien runs off like a little bitch. But you see what I mean. If I'd been further away, I simply couldn't have reacted. The game encourages you to prepare for attacks, but also pushes you to explore and exploit, which will leave you vulnerable if you're trying to stretch your forces thin. It also teaches you not to show your hand, because now I know Lucien ain't all that, so I push back. It's a rough fight, and that flame tank fucked me royally, but we took the city. Steel weak, orc strong. Overall, the combat of Age of Wonders 3 is deep and complex, while being accessible and easy to grasp. Obviously learning the ins and outs takes time, and truthfully, I'm still learning. But at a basic gameplay level, it's self-explanatory. But what about avoiding combat? What if I choose to try the pen instead of the sword and be diplomatic? Time to become a wizard. I make my human sorcerer, and we find ourselves in this barren wasteland. After a little bit of exploring and treasure site claiming, and losing some settlers to fucking zombies, I venture into the volcanic area south of me. There lies a dragon roost, a grand ice dragon residing over Dravastur. This is a dwelling, and we'll talk about those later. For now, the dragon asked me to kill some giants, and you already heard how that went. I'm really struggling in the early game because of the gold bottleneck, and the fact that everywhere I have to settle is either blighted or volcanic. So when I establish near a corrupted riverside inn, I decide to call it Innsmouth. Innsmouth falls a few days later to a pack of yobs with a bear, a fight that the game tells me will result in probable defeat. So I fight it myself, and it is exceptionally close, but I win. Proof that autocomplete will do its best, but sometimes you can do better. Unfortunately, my sole surviving Chad Knight gets set upon by a gang of cultists the very next day, and Innsmouth is fucked. But it's not all bad, because then I meet Julia. So let's talk about diplomacy with other rulers in the game. Julia Iniok is a powerful archdruid elf with a powerful midriff. Pretty soon after meeting me, she wants to sign a peace treaty. I see no downside here.
I think you know what I mean.
All this means at the moment is we won't attack each other. In truth, it should be a non-aggression pact, but that's semantics, whatever. What it isn't, however, is an alliance. If someone declares war on me, Padme here won't come to my rescue. But we get along quite well. She wants open borders, and I finally decide to clean up that inn. Meanwhile, the nearby independent goblin town, of course it would be goblins, that's why the inn is so disgusting, they quite like my renovation project and want to join up. I can quite literally buy out their city, and I do so. Immediately, a roving band of Archon Titans set upon the city I just paid for and stomp my meagre defense. My main priority now is Innsmouth. We just finished painting the skirting, and while I'm preparing for an attack, Julia waltzes over and annihilates the Archons off camera. I was too busy fighting in this beautiful Lost Library tile set to even notice. Great, no more Archons. But the city doesn't go back to me, it's now Julia's. The thieving bitch. I'm talking about this because even your friendly AIs in this game are your rivals. If I want, I could declare war on her and take that city back. Which would be stupid because Julia just took down 2 undead titans. She can have the fucking goblin huts. But not all rulers will be so virtuous. Enter Ham Binger, halfling theocrat. He's also good aligned, but he wants Julia gone, to the point he says, let's make an alliance and declare war on the druid. Tell me, noble halfling, why would I ally myself with the likes of you when I have already allied myself with Julia Bellybutton Iniok? I refuse Ham's offer and make ready for war. He taunts me from my domain borders. I see him rallying for an attack over there. I scare him off. I ask Julia to form an alliance so she might help me in my time of need. Nah thanks, good luck though, is her reply. This is good diplomacy. She's not going to help me out of the goodness of her heart. We could still work together if I had a stronger military power, sure, but I'm the underdog here. Ideally, Ham will wreck his own forces fighting me, and Julia will swoop in to pick up the pieces. This is why Ham wanted to ally with me, because together we stood a chance against Julia. I do not stand a chance against Ham. Not one to wait for death, I press against Ham and wow. These fucking theocrat smiting engines are overpowered as shit. I lose badly and reload. This time I wait 1 turn. The sky blackens, the sun vanishes, and I feel my sorcerer powers fading. A cosmic void storm has occurred. This is a happening, a random event, and these can happen at any point during a game, presenting players with either opportunities or challenges. This void storm affects every player on the map, and it's essentially removed our spellcasting ability. Who should roll up to the city but Julia, here to steal my thunder yet again. But remember, the void storm. Julia may have a tougher fight on her hands than she thinks without her magic, and yes, Halfling Ham beats Druid. Her siege is broken, but the defense has been weakened enough for me to move in. A sorcerer without spells is a pathetic sort, but if I wait even 1 turn, the enemy will begin to recuperate. So after a fight and a half, I take the city. It's mine now. Suck it, Ham. And who the fuck's this? Melenis declared war on... Okay, dude. And Ham is coming back to retake the city. Oh, no, man, I can't handle that. I've got the Goth Girl on line 1 saying it's over and the Butcher turned Reverend on 2 coming from my arse. Diplomacy with these two is pointless. Melenis just straight up asked me for money to spare my life. I gotta respect that. No pretense, no we'll split dinner, just give me the fucking money. This is the only person I want to get along with, but she is pure evil. That's not my opinion, she's put that on her own profile. And good aligned cultures clash with evil cultures. For example, independent cities and dwellings have their own alignments, and an evil aligned ruler will have a much better time making friends with this truly evil pack of undead archons, as opposed to this city of good-natured fairies. I can't pay Melenis because I'm broke. I spent it all on developing that dragon roost and raising a golden dragon. I offer a little bit of money instead, and she takes it, and then declares war anyway. See, I said this segment is about diplomacy, not how to be diplomatic. Ham wants his pint of blood too, and just as he's about to test my armies, Julia swoops in and kills him in his throne city. Ham is cooked, and now I can clean up his armies as independents, meaning they no longer fight as one force on adjacent hexes. But Melenis is at the gate, and try as I might, I can't summon enough backup in time. I decide to go out in one last heroic attempt to retake Castellan.
Get the fuck out!
Melenis is a necromancer, so half of the things we kill get back up, and coupled with her more powerful units, we don't stand a chance. But I'm happy to say Melenis didn't get out without being sent back to the Nether. The last unit to fall is the faithful Golden Dragon, and then Sheena, my sorcerer, is cut down. Even losing in the random maps feels fun compared to the campaigns. However, the AI are not bloodthirsty morons. In another game, Dolores the Hag declared war on my Theocrat. My desire to expand and explore once again caught me spread too thin here, and I cannot defend against her in time. What I can do is appease her. I send her a peace treaty with gold to sweeten the pot, and she accepts the deal. We're now at peace. This isn't just because Dolores is feeling generous. Taking over my empire is a costly endeavour, and she might be thinking she can pull this stunt again and yank my Theocrat like a holy ATM. And sure enough, a few turns later, she declares war on me again. I send as much gold as I can to forge peace, and she accepts. She declares war again. I'm broke, so I send mana. Peacetime. And this time, it holds. I've actually convinced the AI that I am a friend, so one thing is absolutely clear. I need to find this fucking bitch. So, diplomacy may seem simplistic, because it is. There's no real spy network or espionage, even if there are spells that perform that function. There's undermining cities and inciting rebellions, but again that's done at the strategic level with spells. Diplomacy is diplomacy in the strictest sense of the word. It's all about managing relations with other rulers and their factions. Friends are friends until they're not. There is also independent and dwelling diplomacy, which I'll chat about later. But there is an issue with the difficulty. The AI in my Warlord game was set to Knight, but for this Sorcerer game I turned them up to Lord, effectively increasing the game's difficulty by 1 level. But the difference in difficulty on Knight was night and day, no pun intended. My Warlord had time to build up forces, push against cities, and keep momentum for the next one. The greatest threat I faced in that game was from independent forces, and I trumped all of them. The enemy rulers didn't really make a push for my cities at all. One of the AI even surrendered to me, for crying out loud. Meanwhile, with a Theocrat and a Necromancer out for her blood, my Sorceress is getting bum rushed more than Yennefer. This is 1 difficulty level higher. It goes up 2 more, all the way to Emperor. I decide to tone it down for the next map, as difficulty is important to a review, and Age of Wonders games are not quick.
Arr, but what if ye be wanting to sail the 7 seas on an island-based map with Van Cleef, the Pirate Queen?
And oh wow, we start off on a frozen island. Also, don't do islands. There's not enough resources anywhere, and it was too slow paced even for me. I abandoned this game. However, following Mecklenburg's random map guide on Steam, I was able to create a relatively good setting for the perfect pirate adventure, showing how powerful the map generator is when you start tweaking with the settings. Now this is more like it. Plenty of sea air, large islands ready for plundering, with lots of treasure and danger around every corner, and what's this over on this island? Alright, let's make landfall as soon as possible. This is a Naga dwelling, an independent city we can conquer or converse with if we're so inclined. Let's talk about independent cities, dwellings, and why Rogue is the perfect opportunity to do so. There's a reason I picked the Rogue for my pirate empire, and it's not just for thematic purposes, because the Rogue excels at making friends and money. My sorcerer was struggling to make ends meet, while my rogue is rolling in dough every single turn. This is because on every map there are independent cities and dwellings. These guys are not like the hostile independents, but they can become hostile if you anger them. They're not vying for control of the map or playing to win, they exist simply as their own entity. They're vibing, they're chilling. Independent cities are of one race or another, and you can either attack them, choosing to conquer their city, or befriend them, and there are various pros and cons for both. Conquering them will bring you faster results, especially as a warlord who can migrate their own race in faster. But it's an investment in troops and requires your attention to make sure you don't have a revolution on your hands. Befriending them is more hands off, and a point may come when an independent wants to become your vassal for protection. The vassal system is simple. You can't control a vassal in any way, they'll create their own guard and will constantly produce merchandise, a portion of which they will send to you in gold, as you're cut off the top. You can of course supplement their defense, which serves to protect your interests there. After a while, the vassal might propose to join your empire wholly, putting themselves under your control for a fee. Or you might choose to leave them as a vassal, benefiting from their income without the hassle where they just send you money. Rogues have this system easier than any others, and the reason all these crazy races want to be my friend is because the Rogue Empire upgrade, Courtesan Ambassadors, gives a permanent plus 150 relationship boost with dwellings and independence, meaning rogues will have an advantage even if another ruler meets them first. What this means as a rogue in short is that once I've met someone, I basically have to sit back, throw them some gold every now and then, and eventually they'll be throwing gold back with interest, until, if I think they're worthy for my pirate empire, I let them join my crew. There's also the fact that independents, like other rulers, might not be the same race as you, making integration into your empire a non-hostile way to train other racial units. That is, if you don't conquer and exterminate them. Okay, so back to those Naga eggs. What are dwellings? Dwellings are similar to independent cities, but they're not necessarily humanoid races, and they're honestly one of my favourite parts of the game. Dwellings host minor races, and they have access to units that no other race or class does. The Sylvan Court belongs to the Fae, and the first one I encountered was back in the first level of the campaign. I know I said the campaign isn't great, but this example of why I love dwellings is. These fairies want me to take over one of Gamblag's castles, so I oblige. I was headed that way anyway to take Gamblag's head. Remember Gamblag, that goofy ass looking orc? Anyway, after a quick siege, the fairies and me are tight, so they let me move in. And I can see I can create fairies and unicorns right off the bat. I've also got upgrades similar to my own city. I see the words nymph pool and instantly prioritise building that. Not just for the obvious, but because charming units is one of my favourite mechanics in the game. Within a few turns, I've got a backup army wholly different to my regular units, and there are even different varieties of fairy that serve different purposes. These toadstool fairies can inflict brain rot. I'm not even kidding. It was here first. Every melee and ranged attack by a toadstool fairy is the equivalent to a weekend on social media. As a rogue, I can train bards, and they already have access to charm, so why bother with nymphs? Well, it's because nymphs have access to Seduce. Seduce is an overall stronger spell and even has a minus 400 morale hit if it fails to charm the enemy, proving that love hurts. Seduce is a spell all rogues have access to via the Succubus, another one of my favourite units, but that's not available until later in the game, and I can summon tier 3 units. Outside of heroes and succubi, no other units can cast Seduce except nymphs and mermaids, meaning that unless a player can get their hands on a dwelling, It's a skill unique to the rogue archetype. Here is the phenomenal thing about seduce and other mind control mechanics. If you finish the battle with an enemy unit still under your command, you keep them. So you see, I'm not just simping for succubi, I'm the Simp Master General. Those nerds work for me now. That's why this is so important. It isn't just a game changer for one battle, it changes the battles yet to come. The dwellings can totally change a game on the strategic and tactical level. Players might race to befriend them for their boons, fight over them, and once they have them, unlock entirely new options on the battlefield. It's a system I absolutely adore. While only the units I mentioned have seduced, this mind control mechanic isn't unique to rogues and dwellings. Oh no. I found out the hard way the Fearcrat has access to the Convert ability. Look what they do to my buffed up Griffin Rider. His bird's feet have barely touched the ground and they're over there sweet talking him. Now one of the strongest weapons in my arsenal is pointed at me. And he switched faiths instantly. What did they say to convince... Yeah, that'll do it. I love how quickly this ability can change a battle, and it can be broken with break free. But I don't have that here, so I kill him. What a bird brain. Although that example was from a campaign, all dwellings will offer you quests to do to gain their trust. The best quest a dwelling offered me was a fire giant who asked me to go slay some enemies, presumably quarrymen, who mistook a stone giant for a pile of rocks and essentially kidnapped his wife. So, back in my pirate rogue game, I'm beelining for the Naga Island as my first conquest. It feels very appropriate for a pirate to work with the Naga. The unique support unit for the Naga is the Matriarch. And hot damn, if you can't see why she is the S-tier unit, let me put it this way. 4-wheel drive handles better. This is the first time I've seen Crossroads as a tag. Guess which my favourite dwelling faction is? You fucking bet, it's 4 Tits Tina over here. She's got it all, a powerful melee strike, she can strike fear in her enemies, throw curses at them, or woo them with her charms. Time to assemble the quad squad. In all seriousness, the Naga Guardians and the Matriarch together with my rogue hero and one ranged unit, I'm basically unstoppable. When the Matriarch reaches the elite rank, she can even cast Thunderstorm, a powerful area of effect spell. But that's not all. Then there is this mega chad, the creme de la creme of the Naga race, the Glutton. And this guy has a chance to swallow enemies whole in melee combat, just completely removing them from the field of battle. I'm gonna let that play out in its entirety with the sound effect. During an assault on a Fearcrat, my fallen angel was swallowed whole early in the battle. This was a real blow to my forces. I'd already lost one of my few tier 4 units, and the enemy already vastly outgunned me. What I didn't realise when I sent my Manticore Rider and Fanlax in to face the Glutton is that on slaying him, my fallen angel would pop out. They freed her from the Naga's belly. This game is fucking crazy. There is one issue with integrating dwellings and independent cities into your empire. Notice the roaming patrol units like these flying dragons or this big mama Naga sitting pretty. Even back on my pirate elf island, all these towns have guards. The second, the absolute moment you say, "Welcome aboard ship, time to join my empire," these guards vanish. They just instantly disappear. This means the city or dwelling you just spent a load of time and gold befriending, maybe did the runaround and hunted down those monsters in the mine for them, yeah, they're now totally defenseless. I was especially embarrassed when a vassal of Frostlings granted me a small army as tribute, so I figured this was the perfect time to welcome them into the Empire. Immediately we were attacked by wild animals. The Frostling unique range unit throws snowballs, and these direwolves have 100% frost resistance, for crying out loud. It's about as effective as throwing snowballs at a wolf would be in real life. Despite my best efforts and buffing up one Frostling scout to be an absolute trooper, I lost the entire city to a pack of wolves and fucking penguins. Don't worry though, I went back later, retook my city from the penguins, then found their winter lair with yet another gorgeous battlefield. Look at the terrain features they created here with little ice canyons and bridges across them. It's nice, and I like mammoths. but it's time for the Ice Age to end. So yeah, always have a small force standing by to take over as guards. One guy to look after a newly acquired town is not enough. This whole segment was less about the rogue class, more why I think this is some of the best diplomacy in a 4X game, even if it's totally simplistic, because in most of the strategy games I've played, AI rarely want to ally with you unless you're more powerful. That makes sense, and we saw that earlier with my Sorceress game. But dwellings have their own motivations and are almost always less powerful than you. It's true, they might be hostile, but most of them will offer quests or slowly trust you over time, and nurturing them rewards unique units that might give you an edge, as well as ensuring dwellings are resources to fight over. In short, finally, someone who wants to be my friend in a strategy game. But again, I can't help but feel nobody in this game is attacking or even scouting me. I'm noticing a pattern with the Knight difficulty setting, but I still need more time with the game to be sure. I'm not trying to drag out the review like a TV show that really only needed to be 3 episodes. There is genuinely a lot of ground to cover and I want to get it right. I don't need a repeat of the Dragon's Dogma Mage scandal. So I'm going to bump difficulty back up to Lord in my next game to test the AI, while we look at the most unique units of all, the heroes. Time to talk about recruitable heroes and, even more importantly, your avatar, your customizable ruler on the battlefield, and where Age of Wonders 3 starts to bring in light RPG mechanics, and so rises halfling theocrat Faith Shortcake. Your leader isn't just some talking head in a diplomacy screen, nor some figurehead sat on a throne somewhere. They are a unit you can take into battle. How well you build your leader can very well mean their presence turns the tide of that battle. First of all, your class choice doesn't just change your empire and units, it extends to your leader. This may seem obvious, but it's worth mentioning because each class has a different selection of active and passive abilities available to them, outside of their class-specific spellbook. Rogues, for example, can learn the Charm ability shared by the Bard unit of the same class, as well as learning to inflict poison. Meanwhile, your Warlord can learn how to inflict bleeding wounds and overwhelm shield users. These aren't spells that cost casting points, they're just passive or active abilities. The most powerful passives are party-wide buffs. These traits will grant a whole 6-stack army a buff, so long as the leader or hero is present. And this stacks with other hero party-wide buffs. You can also spend your level up points on health, defense, resistance, melee and ranged attack, each increasing those stats. Don't read into it too much like I did and think ranged attack is separate from magic ranged attacks. Thank goodness they didn't go down that route. If your leader uses a bow or a magic wand, ranged attack will cover both. To do any of that, your leader needs to level up, which works similarly to the rank system for regular units, but your leader can get XP just from sitting about running the Empire, signing papers. They'll earn XP faster from combat, of course, but you can leave them defending their throne if you wish. Faith is becoming a bit of a local legend around the green fields of Athla. The holy city of high chastity is bathed in sacred flame and gold as she works to unite the halflings and teach the Tigrans and Frostlings the true path. I've been speccing her into ranged damage but also buffing her army. As a theocrat, she excels in this regard, with healing aura regenerating her army's health, sacred arms granting them spirit melee damage, and a whole host of other holy powers I use to keep the troops alive. I also begin to get a few tag-along faithfuls in the form of heroes, one being an impressive Tigran warrior on a panther, and another being a sickly-looking necromancer goblin. Considering I just forcibly converted the Tigran city, the Tigran hero is a surprise to be sure,
but a welcome one.
Heroes are essentially demi-leaders. They can be built just as much and become just as powerful, but they won't retreat into the void on death. They'll need to be resurrected via a spell. All their shit will drop on the floor, however, so you'll have to run back to your death point to pick up your equipment and pork chops. They can only cast combat level spells, and unlike your ruler's spellbook, it won't be filled by Empire research. It will be expanded by leveling them up and unlocking spells in the level up window. There's balance even here because it means a power leveled hero still has a harder time beating an under leveled leader if that leader has access to more powerful spells and can cast them more frequently. This is offset by the fact that heroes have their own casting point reserve. What I love about Age of Wonders 3 is that you need to have some level of successful infrastructure to have good spellcasting. Cities generate mana, and with the right buildings they also increase your mana cap. Mana is power, but how do you use it? Through casting points. This is where knowledge comes in, allowing you to research your class upgrades, granting you more spellcasting points, and investing gold into your cities will eventually allow you to construct grand palaces, further boosting your casting points. Even with a huge mana pool, you can only cast so many spells at a time because spells have varying mana and casting point costs. Think of it this way, your sorceress has mana tanks. Once that mana is in a tank, it can be used to summon units, construct buildings, or cast spells. By founding new cities, upgrading them with buildings, and harvesting resources, you are essentially upgrading the tank to hold more mana. Summoning, upkeep, and construction all take their mana straight from the source with no bottleneck. But casting spells is different. Your spell casting points are the tap, or faucet for friends across the pond. It doesn't matter how much mana you have, the tap controls how much you can access every turn. By researching your class upgrades and building grand palaces in your city, you widen the tap, meaning you can not only cast more powerful spells, but cast more spells in a single turn or a single battle. What's the difference? After a turn on the strategic map, your casting points will completely refill. Say you want to cast an empire-wide buff, or perhaps put a storm over an enemy city. Doing that will use up casting points for that turn. It may even take a turn or two to prepare that spell for casting, but on the next turn, you'll have all your casting points restored. But what if you were to enter combat before the next turn? The casting points are shared, meaning if you're on 30 out of 60 points before combat, you'll be 30 out of 60 when it begins. This is why it's a good idea to never enter into heavy combat, such as a siege, on the same turn you cast a powerful spell, because you'll be hindering your own ability in the coming fight. This also means a great time to attack an opponent is right after they cast a powerful spell. I'm detailing all this because spellcasting is one of the most powerful aspects of your leader and heroes. The difference here is they can cast their spells even when they're not present in a battle, whereas a hero must be on the battlefield to cast a spell. However, the stresses of manifesting such power from a distance doubles the casting cost. All of this is done to balance fights and give an enemy a chance of beating you even if you've got bigger mana tanks than the Dragon's Crown Sorceress. You can't win every fight just because your leader is supremely powerful, sitting atop their tower hurling lightning bolts. But they can tip the scales both near and far, and that's what I like. It also means the stronger your empire, the stronger your leader and heroes, linking all of these systems together in a harmonious circle, and I just love it so much. This is the same sort of thing I saw in Grim Dawn. There are lots of games that are good at creating systems that are fun and engaging, systems that work well together. But having systems interact and feed into each other is a whole other ballgame. I'm not saying games without this level of interlinking systems are bad, that just isn't what I mean at all. What I'm saying is it's not every day you see it happen to the point where every system interlinks seamlessly. Also, the problems I just described happened to me when Faith was sieging a city. Now, in this case, the independents I'm about to enlighten are obviously outmatched, but defending a city always gives you an advantage. So I want to bait the enemy out from behind the walls, because at this early stage in the game, I don't want to lose even a single foot soldier. Like I said, your leader's casting pool is determined by the level of empire upgrade you've researched, meaning Shortcake can just smite fools like an angelic Gatling gun. When the enemy finally realise what's going on, they send out their last remaining unit. I swoop my Eagle Rider in and take the city. And I just want to take the opportunity to point out how I love halflings have Eagle Rider units. So this all sounds good, right?
Not this time.
Wrong, because then one of my cities is attacked, and it looks like probable defeat for my ranged halflings. I've quite literally got 2 blokes up there, one with fireworks and one with a slingshot. Even if she isn't present, my leader would have been able to assist in the battle with spells. But she just blew her load fighting the Frostling heretics. I'm all out of justice juice, and I think the city is lost. Fortunately, I'm a tactical genius. Remember how disgusting I said the halfling lucky passive was? The heavy lifting from just these 2 ranged units is often why ranged units are invaluable in defense. Anyway, you see what I'm saying about the great balance of the casting system. You put all your chips in on your turn, you're not ready for enemies on their turn. Age of Wonders 3, again encouraging you to be aggressive, but also focus on being prepared rather than reacting. The research and spellbook your leader has access to is determined by their class and specializations. Specializations are an additional way to complete your build and, like your class selection, bring new unique empire upgrades to research, spells to cast, and units to summon. Sometimes these can complement your playstyle or change the field of battle entirely. For example, this fight I got into here was marked as probable defeat for my army. A hero and a firstborn versus my ragtag group of nobodies. It's over for me, especially as warlords don't really have direct damage spells. Fortunately, Karshak is also a destruction master, meaning he has access to the disintegrate spell. Probable defeat my ass. When you create a leader, you have access to free specialization slots, and they really are more than just fancy spells. Specializing in destruction means I can also use hasty plunder, looting cities for all their worth even faster. The Shadowborn specialization is what allows me to bring fallen angels onto the field, as well as Gift of Necron, a combat spell that heals any unit that delivers a killing blow. Specializations are not all spell focused, there are simpler ones like Expander, focused on turning your empire into an expansion powerhouse, and Explorer, great for rogues and helps open up the world map to you. Back to the spellbook, there are also secret spells. These are not chosen by your class or specialization, and only your leader can learn them. These secret spells are obtained through completing quests and exploring dungeons. However, they are exceptionally rare, and it's likely you'll only see a couple in a game unless you're just clearing everything on the map. We're still not done talking about leaders and heroes, by the way, because what good fantasy game would be complete without loot? The spoils of war are a hallmark of Age of Wonders, and there are quite literally hundreds of unique items to find. Your heroes will have several equipment slots: a weapon, an offhand, 2 accessories, a helmet, chest piece, boots, and finally a mount. Yes, because you can find better mounts for your heroes as well. They also have 10 inventory slots each, allowing them to hold items with on-use skills ranging from blowpipes and crossbows to cups of tea and firework kits. Items will grant your hero various boons and abilities, allowing them to perform better on the battlefield. They'll range in quality from common through to mythical, with them increasing in power as they go. Some will provide basic buffs like raising defense and attack. Others might provide elemental resistance. But some will grant effects like Lifesteal or Dragon Slayer. Some weapons will allow heroes to use backstab when they otherwise couldn't. Other items grant usable skills. Remember the big deal I made about the Seduce ability and how heroes could learn how to do it? It's through rare items that allow them to use Seduce. The mythical Tigran face mask will grant your hero the ability to become a werepanther, while Essence of Garlic will give you gas breath. Mounts provide heavy benefits, and honestly they just look really cool. Who doesn't enjoy getting on a new war mount to ride into battle? I mean, I love the base horses, but getting a Frostling onto a bleak warg? Look at that. Some mounts can even allow your heroes to fly, teleport short distances, climb walls, or tunnel through the underground. Sometimes mounts are found as is, but other times they are found as eggs that will hatch in 10 turns. The Sorcerer even has the ability to cast the Invoke Legendary Mount spell, and once cast it will give them a random egg from a pool of powerful mounts. Look at that, Golden Wyvern first try, nice. A great example of how items change the game is back with my Theocrat. One of my Frostling heroes just cleared out a place and found a pair of sandals. Frostlings have an inherent weakness to fire, but these sandals provide flame protection, so when they wear them it cancels it out, bringing her into a net positive 20% fire protection. Even a little thing like that can let my Frostling take on a whole new host of opponents who might bring fire to bear. But what if you can't find the perfect item to complete your Balenciaga aesthetic? Make your own! I'm not kidding, there's even a simplistic crafting mechanic. The Arcane Item Forge is a high level upgrade for your cities, allowing you to tailor make the perfect accessory to order. New axe for your Orc Warlord? Yes please. What do you get the pirate who has everything? Gold, of course. Faith Shortcake is getting some footwear. Let's not read into that too much. There's a power limit of 5 points to crafted items, meaning you can't dump everything on a stick and call it a day. Some buffs are naturally more powerful than others. For instance, a shield with the Shield of Light trait uses up all 5 power points, whereas this shield loadout has a +2 spirit range strength, 20% fire resistance and a basic +2 defense against flanking attacks. Some traits stack, so here I've got 2 defense modifiers just to make an absolute tank of a shield. Rule of thumb is the greater the point cost, the more powerful the item trait. Lifesteal uses up 4 points, perfect for an Orc Warlord, but you could stack some fire damage with some cold damage and still have a point left over to break some city walls. How about a ring that regenerates health and buffs attacks of opportunity? You can even make custom on-use items like the teacup I mentioned ages ago. Here's my hypnotic chicken, a chicken that befriends other animals. The more production a city has, the faster the item will be completed, and you can queue up a whole host of custom gear for your hero just like you would anything else. Whatever you decide to make, I have it on good authority that the Forge Master is a dab hand at iron and steel.
The Master works all, you can't go wrong.
This Fearcrack game, by the way, is the same game with Dolores the Hag, who I paid off. Remember her? So far, she hasn't declared war for a 4th time. After I finish kitting out my ruler with a load of custom gear, I soon meet another evil character, a high elf sorcerer named Saradas. We seem to get along and we sign peace papers. I then meet a 3rd evil ruler named Zorn. I think I am the only good guy on this map. But whatever, we continue. I expand a little bit, find a giant dwelling, and I'm just minding my own business when Zorn declares war on me. Okay Zorn, I see how it is. So I decide to take the fight to him, and he's made a huge mistake. My holy army is easily a match for his warlord troops, but I chill outside his city trying to trigger a rebellion for the review when I realise something. Zorn's capital city has gone. I was going to head over that way later, but it's already been sacked by Saradas. The one person who asked me for peace is now inviting himself to my spoils. It's fucking Midriff Julia all over again. This will not stand. In a bold move, I declare war on Saradas and waltz up to the city he just captured. Saradas, for some reason, leaves, and I take the city without resistance. That was easier than I expected, but now there is a slight problem. First of all, I'm still at war with Zorn, and my empire is sandwiched between the two of them. Secondly, Saradas has access to a lot more cities and troops than I do. He has a lot of tier 4 merfolk units called Lord of the Deep, which can create a thunderstorm, randomly unleashing lightning bolts on every enemy in a battle, which he stacks with the static electricity spell. This buffs all of his units with static shield, and debuffs all of my units with lightning weakness. This is a great example of sorcerer spells synergizing with dwelling units. I love this game, but suffice to say, I fucking hate this guy, and all my units get shocked and stunned constantly. As soon as he left, he came right back and attacked me in Zorn's old stomping grounds, and this battle it's not working out, so I am forced to reload and try a different strategy. This time, instead of sitting in Zorn's city, waiting for Saradas to return and conquer it, yet again, I leave. Just far enough that he can't catch up to me and engage, so he retakes the city, but makes a fatal error. He doesn't position his armies in adjacent hexes, meaning the super powerful stack with the Eldritch Horror doesn't support him in the coming fight. I've got him, and after a good siege, making use of the powerful Fearcrack units and a good mixture of unit types, we prevail, sending Saradas to the Shadow Realm. The war continues. He tries to jump my fire giant convoy and succeeds in felling a hero of mine, but the fire giants wipe out 5 of his tier 3 griffins. I take some of his smaller dwarven cities, working my way through the mountains. He sieges my little human fort and we barely manage to defend against the attack. Again, highlighting that lower tier units with good tactics do stand a chance, especially in a defensible position. I realise that Xorn isn't attacking me at all, and I don't blame him. He's quite content to let me wage war on Saradas, who is clearly the biggest threat. So I do something very on brand for a theocrat. I forgive him and send a peace offering. Xorn accepts, we are now friends. More skirmishes take place. Saradas's merfolk printer is working overtime, and I am creating convoys of shrines of smiting, fire giants, and as many Tigrans as possible to support my flanks. Then I call down the big guns. The archangels are coming. Just in time for a quick defense against Saradas. There it is again, that bullshit lightning move. Oh, but this time I'm ready, and I disjunct it. Eat shit, wizard bitch! My archangel goes down like a ton of bricks, but fortunately, so long as we win, she will be reborn. I do learn truly how strong the human knights are though, supplemented by my halfling forces, giving them even more morale. These guys are true troopers. This was honestly such a great fight. After losing a city, I get Dolores on the blower and say, look, we had our differences at the start, love, but now we've known each other longer than anyone else. How about I pay you to go to war with Saradas? Clearly, Dolores is not going to help with the war effort in any way. It's mostly to rub salt in the elf's wounds. She accepts and declares war. I'm spitting distance from his throne city. I brand him a heretic and use the Keeper of the Peace spell, Rally of the Populace. This will show the good high elves of Athla just what a right prick their leader is. I hope it does. I really want the rebel event for the YouTube video I'm making. And lo and behold, it happens. Liberate Dunadel. Saradas realizes this is it and flees. It's over for him. I accept the quest to liberate the elves, and in the siege the gates are thrown open with rebels spawning inside. Weirdly, the rebels are trebuchets and battering rams. Little strange, but I'll take any help I can get. His throne city is ours. I call down the Wrath of God as a theocrat, that's speed dial 1, and then we meet on a frozen battlefield. Theocrat versus sorcerer, halfling of the light against elf of the scroll. He is not to be underestimated, especially with his griffin riders and powerful worm summon. Unless I can just banish it. Yep. There it goes. My pony riders, who I have had since the start of the game, join me in the fight. I throw chickens. I call heresy. Lucky just pays off again and again. We do a little conversion, ram a dwarf, and my pony riders fall, and truly this gets me. I wanted these guys to make it through this fight. Finally, all that is left is Saradas, and in what I can only describe as satisfying, he is slashed by an angel, then gunned down by a shrine. I hope you'll forgive this little story, but it's to convey just how much fun this game is, how well all its aspects work together. I haven't even mentioned the vassals I formed along the way, the fact Dolores declared war on Xorn in the middle of all this going on. Age of Wonders 3 is a game where you can explain all the systems, all the ins and outs of combat, and the wonderful units, classes, races, and terrain, but it's only when they're all put together do you really get a taste for the game. I have no doubt missed or forgotten some parts of the gameplay. Truly, this is one of the most complex fucking games I've ever reviewed, but I hope I've covered it well enough, and I truly think it's one of the best turn-based strategy games I've ever played. I can see myself coming back to this for a game every now and then. It's truly something special. Oh shit, necromancers. I said I'd talk about them later and I forgot. Okay, let's make a frostling Lich Queen. Look at this. Frostlings can have icicles for hair, and the necromancer outfits are fantastic. Time to jump into the cold heart of Undeath. I am a big fan of necromancy. I was a Lich in Pathfinder, I played a Death Knight in Grim Dawn, and I think Arthas did nothing wrong. Necromancer plays a little differently to other classes. First and foremost, your citizens are dead, meaning your population growth is even more reliable and you never have to keep your citizens happy because they just don't use the happiness system. This means your cities can never rebel or protest, but it also means they can't throw festivals or have a greater income due to being in good spirits, because the only spirits a necromancer cares about are lost ones. Your population growth on new cities is, however, appalling and provides a reasonable challenge and balance for the class. You can't even prioritise housing to boost city growth, which is insane to me because even undead, I would still want a place to live, a nice crypt or something. You will, however, gain population from winning fights, which will get funneled to nearby cities. I love this. It's thematically appropriate because you've got more bodies to add to the pile, and necromancers can even gain research points for any battle that takes place, further encouraging that aggressive playstyle. You can also set a plague of undeath upon enemy cities, which will cause them to lose population per turn, and siphon that populace back to your nearest city. So sometimes not conquering is the best option. Necromancers are similar to the Sorcerer in that they have a pool of units to summon in, but unlike the Sorcerer, they have more units trainable in cities. Sorcerers only have access to one trained class unit, the Apprentice, and they basically serve to support summoned units. Necromancer feels almost like the reverse. The trained units are supported by the summons, which feel more disposable. You won't cry over a Banshee getting silenced, but you will hate to lose that Reanimator. Reanimators are exactly what they sound like, which is great because reanimation fascinates me. But first, let's talk about how necromancers handle racial units. Ghoul units are basically necromancer versions of standard units, the difference being they're not quite as vital as living versions. Ghoul is a status condition on all ghoul units, giving them a 20% weakness to spirit damage and a negative point to defense. Every unit a necromancer creates in their own undead cities will be an undead or a ghoul, or both. Taking over a city will give you the option to ghoulify its populace or migrate in your preferred race of undead. Acquiring a city through diplomacy will automatically change its population to undead. But vassals, so long as they're alive, will gift you units in their living forms, and you can get random units from exploration. By and large though, every unit you have will be undead, and that's the way we like it. The biggest drawback to being undead is the lack of regeneration. If you thought machines needing to go back to a city to repair every time was annoying for the Dreadnought, then imagine if every unit you have has to do the same thing. It's not that bad, thankfully. Your units won't passively regenerate health, but visiting cities with an Embalmer's Guild will regenerate 50% of their health in one turn. And necromancers can research vampiric life stealing, so regen is less of a problem as you're healing while you're fighting. And I like this trade-off. It's much more forgiving than the Dreadnought. Reanimators can, however, heal undead. Similar to how priests can heal the living, apprentices can mend magical summons, and engineers can repair machines. But here is the thing. The living and magical summons will regenerate between fights anyway. Ghouls and other undead units, while they can't regenerate, have other ways to heal, through either vampiric leeching, and eventually other support units can heal undead also. This sort of puts machines in a spot where outside of healing at cities with workshops, they rely on emergency repairs. This ability can only be used in a battle and then only by heroes and elite rank engineers. Reanimators, by contrast, always have access to heal undead. Dreadnoughts can reassemble a destroyed machine, bringing a dead machine unit back online with 35% HP, but reassemble is a spell, not an ability. A hero or leader must cast this. Meanwhile, reanimate lesser undead is an ability that can be used to reanimate a tier 1 or 2 undead with 50% health. And eventually, your reanimators can do this, meaning it's not just a leader spell or even a hero ability, it's a basic class unit ability. As strong and as destructive as machines are, the relentless onslaught of the Necromancer just feels superior to the Dreadnought, purely in terms of balance. But it's more than raising friendly undead back to life. A Necromancer has the ability to turn enemy corpses into new troops for their army. Necromancers can raise cadavers from fallen units, living or undead, friend or foe. Cadavers are pretty weak, but fairly vicious, nothing our boy Leon can't handle. They are most useful in my experience as cannon fodder and serve exceptionally well in blocking off choke points, as well as providing flanking pressure on an enemy where they just took out one of your units. They can also add themselves to the Bone Collector. This is another trained unit, and the more cadavers it gains, the more powerful it becomes. So cadavers are pretty weak, but they serve a tactical purpose and to bolster another unit. So that's fairly balanced, right? Well, bring out the Deathbringer. That's right, these badasses. Every time they melee attack, they have a chance to inflict the Ghoul Curse. If a target resists the curse, it will be immune to it for the rest of the battle. But if they succumb to the curse, when they die, they will be raised as a ghoul. Not cannon fodder cadavers, but as an undead under the Necromancer's control. The more I play and talk about Necromancer, they just sound so much stronger than the other classes. Age of Wonders 3 does encourage you to take advantage of their weaknesses, fire and spirit damage especially, but also like the Sorcerer, they rely heavily on mana. Take that away from them by denying mana nodes and taking cities, and they will begin to shut down. The weakness of a Necromancer is in their economy. Their strength is in combat. So even if I feel the class is stronger than others, it helped that I played a game where I quickly established a working economy. But even I felt the mana pangs creeping in at the early game. If my first ever game had been Necromancer, it would have gone the same way as my Sorcerer playthrough. I think there are balance issues with Age of Wonders 3, but they aren't sufficient enough for me to say it's broken. But it's important to talk about. I've not really had to consider balance issues in a review before because I don't really give a shit how broken the Ice Patch and Kick combo is. Also, Necromancers are incredible at the ping pong technique. You know how I keep insisting low tier units can fight high tier units? Well, here I keep a tier 4 Eldritch Horror busy just by planting Lost Souls next to him and leaving them on defense. They'll regen a little health when he attacks because they're attacking him, and if they die, Lost Souls can actually come back once per battle. But remember, I'm a Necromancer, so I can manually reanimate one again. This lets me ping pong this Chad unit with 99 HP, capable of one-shotting my entire army until he's dead. This guy blew his electric breath way too early in the fight. Little interesting bit here, the lore I gave about Frostlings being matriarchal isn't just flavour. The Royal Guard have an ability similar to the Martyr's Transfer Pain. The Martyr, you may remember the Fearcrack unit, can transfer a portion of any damage a friendly unit might take to themselves. The Frostling Royal Guard can do something similar, but only with female Frostling units. That's cool. Final word on the difficulty. It's great in random maps, and what I interpreted as a steep curve in challenge was in fact just a lack of understanding and familiarity with the classes I'd chosen. I didn't understand that Sorcerer isn't just a class with summons, it is primarily summons, supported by trained units. This is why I struggled with it so much, and why my Fearcrack game went so well. Short answer, get good. Okay, now I really am done with gameplay. On to the story and characters. Well, this is awkward, because normally I would review the storytelling, how well the narrative is conveyed to the player, and if it was any good. But I haven't played the campaign in its entirety, so I can't do that. I'm not going to review something I haven't experienced. I love the scrolling text pages with voiceover, as it reminds me of those classic Age of Empires 2 campaigns. What I heard of Sundren's story is good, narrative-wise it's simple but solid, and there's a point in chapter 4 where you can pick from 2 different paths. Either exterminating the Commonwealth and the humans, or working with them to root out the corruption taking hold in the Commonwealth. But the in-game storytelling is lackluster. There are some events like Merlin appearing in a Clash of Thunder, which I appreciated, but none of these dialogue boxes are voiced, which is just a shame. There is some storytelling present on the map, like the private oasis sign with ogres and nymphs around a little pool, that's nice. It's largely unremarkable, however, and combined with the awful experience I had actually playing the campaign, I'd just rather not. In this case, I think that the stories you create as a player are far and away more interesting. It's personal indulgence here, but I love reading comments where someone has a story to tell. Maybe they found a great Hitman route, maybe they did the exact same shit I did in Dragon's Dogma. Games that let a player have their own experience and adventure so they come out of it with a story to tell. This is what Age of Wonders 3 is. Yes, that's a cop-out, but I can't fully review something I haven't played through. And the art, the story panels are just phenomenal. But again, I can't review it. What I do like is the world building. Every single unit in the game has a lore entry, and it's told from a whole host of perspectives. There's advice on where to start with dragon slaying from a professional slayer, drinking songs for you and your brew brothers, and a sorcerer's article on why it's no longer trendy to summon water elementals. Frost elementals are what's in this season, and they're mean ice machines at the bar as well. The Draconian Hatchlings lore entry comes from an ogre cookbook on the perils of scrambling draconian eggs, detailing how one chef lost an entire breakfast crew. Really, the world building is perfect. The sound and music of Age of Wonders 3 is good. There are some bits I'm really impressed with and others not so much. The soundtrack is composed by veteran composer Michiel van den Bos. He not only worked on the score for the original Age of Wonders, but also composed tracks for Unreal Tournament, Deus Ex, and Triumph's other game, Overlord, and the soundtrack is just wonderful. It's lengthy, so of course not every track is memorable, but there are some tracks that come on and you're just pulled into the world. You're either relaxed as you watch your empire flourish, or they serve to get your war brain in 5th gear. And it starts with that main theme. The fastest way to seduce a player. Van den Bos captures the sound of fantasy, soaring horns to carry your empire forwards, with drums echoing the sound of battle, but also reflects the quiet, mysterious corners of this mystical world, dipping the theme into a mellow tone with vocals, before bringing it back up again. I love this theme, and it's perfect for this game. March of the Halflings. You can hear the roving bands of halflings prancing around meadows as they make their way from inn to inn. Some of the tracks are reimagined or remastered versions of music he'd previously composed for the original Age of Wonders. Probably most notable is Love and Death, and if you played any Age of Wonders before, you'll understand why this is so important. It's like he took all of the emotion and fantasy that comes from playing these games and condensed it into a musical track. So important is Love and Death that it may as well be a requested feature for Age of Wonders 4. And the reimagined tracks are all great. Nothing beats Battle Macabre, an absolutely cinematic track to wage war to that kicks in on the battlefield, the sound of glorious combat. Clouds and Feuds Revisited. This one especially feels as much a reimagining as it does a tribute to the games that came before. But don't let me misrepresent this soundtrack. The new original pieces are amazing, especially remembering Snowscapes, which is just beautiful. So yes, I think Van den Bos did a bang-up job and created a score that hits those fantasy notes with a tone perfect for an empire-building game. Not every track is unforgettable, but the tracks that do hit hard enough to stick with you and you recognise them when they come on, just like the old games. I grew up with the soundtrack to Age of Wonders 1 and 2, with the latter being composed by Mason B. Fisher, and if you're like me, you want it all. So here are some workshop mods by Miramisu that will add the soundtrack from both the original Age of Wonders and its sequel without replacing any music. They'll play right alongside each other. Where sound effects are concerned, some effects are absolutely phenomenal. Ranging from the clash of swords, the flapping of dragon wings, the satisfying bang of a cannon. From what I can tell, some units have unique injury and attack sounds, which is an impressive level of detail. Some might be shared, but it's hard to tell in the heat of battle. The sound of magic spells being cast brings so much variation, and even if you don't know the sound by heart, you generally have some idea what the spell did from the sound of it. I'm a big fan of the succubi sound effects. No, come on, no, stop judging me, it's not for that. I'm actually talking about the fact that their melee attacks are slapping sounds as they smack their opponents with their bare hands. That's great attention to detail. However, the sound balancing can be fucking atrocious. I've turned some audio down like music and effects, which is why I'm fairly sure these sound effects are tied to neither. The ambience is just glorious for a strategy game. Now, I mean it. You need to turn the music down a bit to appreciate it better, because the default 100% on everything is absurd, but when isn't it? The sound of the temperate forests. or the misty jungles with exotic birds. The flowing rivers as they lead into the crashing ocean. The noxious swamps. Deep within the bowels of the earth. Every corner of Athla has ambience that transports you instantly to that locale. Not only that, but treasure sites have little audio cues when you click on them. And when you are near them, magma forges bubble away. This does pose a problem, as while some of these little ambient additions are welcome, some of them are not. This is where the sound balancing strikes yet again, because gold mines and quarries are louder than any other background ambience. And since you'll probably be building cities around gold mines, you'll hear the sound of a gold mine anytime your camera is over a city. So get used to this sound. Now that might not seem bad in 5 seconds of video, but imagine that over a long game session. Hey, you don't have to imagine. I've created an hour-long ASMR video so you can suffer too, and the link is in the description. But don't let that take away from all the wonderful climate ambience, however, which is great. The voice acting is mostly strong, with my favourites being Samantha Beart as Sundren and Brendan McCoy as Arvik from the Eternal Lords DLC. Samantha Beart is great as Sundren, and she does an excellent job and captures the elven princess, balancing that sound of noble birth and upbringing with determination and a hint of mischief. You may also recognise her as the voice of Karlach.
Really?
Brendan McCoy steals the show as Arvik the Frostling Necromancer. He gives a classical, almost stage performance, which is perfect for the Frostling.
When I presented myself before the High Queen, the other suitors mocked me. Called me the Lord of Rubble and Bone. To see them there, fat on riches bought with the lives of my people.
Powerful, restrained and contemplative. Absolutely a joy to listen to.
They are moving steadily north and the lands are changing. The glaciers are melting and in their place come burnt deserts. Endless sands shifting in the hot wind.
There is some slight audio muffling of the recording, in my opinion, which is such a shame because with a performance like this, he deserved a better technical setup. I haven't let my opinion of the campaign tarnish my thoughts of the voice acting. Some of it is really good, all of it is tied to the campaign, and there is just no voice acting whatsoever outside of that. There's no real war cries or battle chants, it's all just generic sounds of battle with background shouting. It's done with purpose to let you attach your own factions, rulers and lore to the games you play. It would cheapen the world building in my head for the characters and empires I create if they cried out a totally different house name during battle. So I get why there aren't any, but some nondescript chanting from spellcasters would have been nice. Whatever the shortcomings, overall the sound and music of Age of Wonders 3 is so good and perfectly captures the fantasy setting they've created. I think graphics are a really boring thing to judge a game on, so I'm doing visuals and spectacle, and that's how dazzling and interesting it is to me within the style of the game. It goes without saying that I will be reviewing the visuals without the use of any appearance changing mods. And while Age of Wonders 3 is just lovely to look at, it's not without its visual issues. First, the ruler customization. This is probably the least important thing for most players, but for me, being able to create a good looking ruler, someone to represent my faction, is absolutely essential. The character creator in Age of Wonders 3 is one of those that you have to work at to get a good looking character, but with a little time, you can create a ruler you're happy with. The scene lighting can make this process a real struggle, as some scenes tend to cast very unflattering shadows across your character, while others bathe them like they're under a streamer's ring light. But looking past all that, there are some combinations which just look fucking badass. I mean, look at this dude. This next one is a pre-built character, but holy shit, when you get this character creator to play ball, it's insane what you can make. Halflings just have that lovely homely look to them, whether you want Tigran pharaohs, dark theocrat elves, Frostling generals, or dwarves with an ample crumple zone, there's a fair amount of creativity allowed within the creator. Some creations will look straight up goofy, but that is part of the charm, and like I said, you can avoid this with a bit of time spent making a character. Just don't look too closely at the feet. Some of them are made from balls of dough. I get that it's not the most important part of a strategy game, and in truth, I remember Age of Wonders 3 being one of the few strategy games that had so much customization back then. Being able to create a leader to represent your faction both in diplomacy and on the battlefield is just such a strong selling point, and for the time I think they did it well. From ruler models to unit models, and while almost all of them look absolutely fantastic, some have aesthetic choices that I don't really like. Such as the succubus wings looking like a Rorschach test. That's all subjective, but what I can't deny is that they all have good textures and model work, and when they do look good, they look fantastic. Every single racial unit has been designed to a T. If you see a high elf archer, you know what it is and what role it fills, everything just from the sight of it on the battlefield. The class units are where some of the racial aesthetic drops off. Your high elves who are all wearing elegant gilded armour suddenly have donned a barbarian harness. Likewise, the Tigrans adorned in beautiful sand-kissed clothing. Well, every single crusader is just going to forget that and wear the dorkiest armour I've ever seen. Yeah. The Theocrat aesthetic ranges from the goofiest things I've ever seen in my life to metal as fuck martyrdom. The whole race/class aesthetic thing can be a little jarring, but I imagine it's done to both preserve the class fantasy over the racial fantasy and allow someone to recognise what a unit is in multiplayer without studying it. The most important thing is once you recognise a class unit, you know what it does, just like the racial units. The design and aesthetic is striking enough that it facilitates gameplay while looking pleasing to the eye, even with a few shortcomings. Visuals that serve a purpose and look good, in other words. The human knight is perfect. Even their horses look like moving castles, and the sight of them along with other cavalry charging through open terrain is perfect. Watching an ice queen perform her deathly cold magic is just so satisfying. Look at the idle animations. The fallen angel will rarely stretch her wing out, opening up those beautiful reds and blacks before checking her spear is sharp. The dread monkeys scratching their bums. Of course, some units look better than others, so again, I really recommend the racial class unit reskin mod, purely because it's so well done and lore friendly. It feels like that's what the game developers would have created if they'd had extra months to beautify the units even more. For crying out loud, get it just to fix the Crusaders. All of the terrain is gorgeous, and the sheer variation allowed by the layering system is immense. There are more combinations than I could see in a reasonable amount of time, but they were all good to look at. And even on the strategic map, everything is just so nice to look at, and again, just like the units, eventually you'll get to recognise the terrain types, so you'll know at a glance if the land your armies are about to enter are just wetlands or a blighted poisonous mess. The world of Athla is rendered beautifully, and I never get tired of seeing these maps. The colour palette is perfect, with vibrant and warm colours. Something Triumph discussed when developing Age of Wonders 4, and that if Age of Wonders 3 was more about autumnal hues, then 4 was about spring tones, cooler and magical. And it's just as good looking on the tactical map, with good locations to fight through, with so much visual diversity and appealing locales. The underground is exactly what you'd hope it to be visually. Look at the reflective surfaces on the Naga units, this is just such a lovely bit of detail. Visually, Age of Wonders 3 is fantastic, and in my opinion it stood the test of time. The UI, the fonts, the unit design, every part of this game looks pretty. Yes, there are a few things that need a touch of paint in my opinion, but you don't need to do that to enjoy the visual splendour of the game. Okay, it's summary time, and I'm starting with the negatives because I want to end on a positive note. I experienced a crash to desktop once. No, not just because I was looking respectfully and took the camera out of bounds. I had one random crash to desktop, but fortunately the game autosaves. No, I can't find the footage of it because I have days of Age of Wonders 3 footage. I was also playing with mods, and one crash on a modded game out of about 100 hours playtime, that's a dream of mine for Skyrim. Holy shit, Age of Wonders 3 is very stable in my experience. Again, awful sound balancing, but if you tweak the volume sliders you can largely get it under control. although some sounds will always be louder. Aside from that, Age of Wonders 3 is a detailed, complex, and layered turn-based strategy game with strategic and tactical gameplay, amazing unit variation, simple but effective diplomacy, satisfying empire building, and thoughtful combat. It's a game that I am glad I gave a second chance, and for me it fits that category of games like RimWorld where you can pop it on and really chill out for a lazy evening. And given the time some of the AI need on their turns, you will need an evening. Triumph Studios did a great job, and they would return in 2019 with Planetfall, a game I've never played because as much as I am a dinosaur fan, I've never cared for dinosaurs with lasers. I think they should be allowed to chomp naturally. Then Age of Wonders 4 in 2023, a game I have mixed feelings about due to some shift in gameplay direction, a steady release of DLC, and most of all, Paradox Interactive.
Some of the biggest changes you'll find in Stellaris 4.0 have been done to Pops.
Triumph are still developing it, so I have faith it's in good hands, and maybe when the game is effectively finished, I'll take a closer look at it. But truthfully, I am happy with Age of Wonders 3. It's just wonderful. Fine, I've been saving that for the fucking end. The Wraith, by the way, is the Covenant tank lobbing these blue plasma balls, and nothing breaks a UNSC soldier like blue balls. And from just one expression, we all instantly know what Leon's thinking.
Long time no see.
Ada.
Leon, you have to find some way to get inside.